Okay, it's a Saturday morning. I should be in bed, but I'm going to do a show instead. Hey, that rhymes. All right. All right, let's start the program, known as Haff in the Morning, with an extended intro. And it comes your way in 3, 2, 1. Coming up on this edition of Haff in the Morning, Chris Pine stars in a Josh Weldon election. Weldon? Oh, jeez. I could just give up my geek cred right now. Let's try that again. Take 2 in 3, 2, 1. You know what? I screwed that up. Let's try that one more time. Take 3 in 3, 2, 1. Coming up on this edition of Haff in the Morning, Chris Pine stars in a Josh Whedon election video. Google disclosed a major Windows bug, and Microsoft's not happy. Plus, the NFL's Baldinger suspended for bounty remark. Details on these stories, plus a whole lot more, on today's episode of Haff in the Morning.
Thank you, hero. You've saved our town. I can offer you the breastplate of Argon or the staff of Netherwind.
Breastplate.
Here you go, hero, and thanks again. We appreciate you. Hello, adventurer. Thank you for saving our town. I can offer you the
Breastplate of Argo.
or the staff of Netherwind.
Breastplate.
The staff of Netherwind.
Breastplate.
The breastplate's got the same hit points as one.
Why don't you try it on now?
What the?
I'm Hillary Clinton, and I approve this message.
Good Saturday morning, my friends. Welcome to another edition of Haff in the Morning for Saturday, November 5th, 2016. You know what that means. Today is the 61st anniversary of Marty McFly arriving in Hill Valley from his then future 1985 into 1955. Back to the Future. Come on, you didn't think of that? Anyway, welcome to the program, my friends, where we talk about anything and everything. And today's program is going to be a little bit lighthearted compared to normal programs, although we are going to talk politics a little bit, as we often do. But before I get to all that, I encourage you to drop me an email or two at haffinthemorning@gmail.com. That's HAFF in the morning @gmail.com. haffinthemorning@gmail.com. And also be sure to check out my website, tinyurl.com/hafnermedia. HAFFNER. tinyurl.com/hafnermedia. That's where you can find all kinds of good links to your own customizable news page, weather page, sports page, as well as fun sites and whatever else is going on. My Instagram account, Twitter, Facebook, tinyurl.com/hafnermedia. Well, welcome to the program, my friends, and as you might have expected, this is another recording. Yeah, it's actually 3:10 on a Thursday morning as I'm producing this particular segment, so if you're still interested in finding out what's going to happen with my car, I probably won't have anything new until, I would say, Sunday or Monday at the earliest, okay? Right now, my intention is to do a live show tomorrow, but I don't know if that's going to be possible yet. We will see, because my schedule is about to get a whole lot crazier over the next several days, so that's what's going on there. Anyway, welcome to the program, my friends, and to start off with what's on my mind for today, you're familiar with actor Chris Pine, aren't you? I did it again. I forgot to put in my background music bed here for just a moment, so just bear with me for a few seconds as I put this in over here, pop that down to there, and hit play. Anyway, you're familiar with actor Chris Pine. His dad, of course, played what was it, the commissioner on ships, or at least a higher-ranking official. Oh, anyway, Chris Pine, of course, has most famously played Captain Kirk in the reboot of the Star Trek franchise. He's also played Singing Princes and Texas bank robbers, but his latest role may be his most unhinged performance yet. Pine stars in the latest election video from director Joss Whedon's Save the Day initiative. It's a super PAC aimed to encouraging young voters to get to the polls, which is coming up on Tuesday. And so far, Whedon has recruited stars like Mark Ruffalo, Robert Downey Jr., Scarlett Johansson, Julianne Moore, Don Cheadle, Bill Hader, Minka Kelly, and more for his latest video. Well, Pine takes center stage as a deranged and selfish businessman. And the video unites Pine as well as the pilot of Firefly's Serenity as Alan Tudyk play a boss who introduces Leonard, a seemingly normal corporate drone played by Pine. Well, as time goes on, however, it becomes increasingly clear that Leonard is a little off-kilter as he throws raging hissy fits about healthcare plans, shuts down the entire company, and chases his female co-workers around yelling, "I'm the boss of you, I'm the boss of your whole body." Well, no employee would get away with this, the PSA goes on to explain, so why has Congress? And while it's more of a visual presentation, the audio carries along with it a pretty good message, and I'm going to play it for you right now on this edition of Haff in the Morning.
I will say, at first, we had such high hopes for Leonard. But then right away, there were issues.
Okay, but when we switch to the new plan, I'll still be covered?
The whole company will, even janitorial.
No! I want my idea!
What idea?
That we don't do that!
What do we do instead?
Well, not that! How come janitorial has all that health stuff? They don't even have cool ties.
I don't see how that...
I'm shutting down the company.
Okay, you can't just shut down.
La 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 la. Shutting down the company for a month. I still get paid.
He can't just do that, right?
Well... The company bylaws are... well, they're weird.
Jesus. Are you okay?
No, that's insane.
We need to get rid of that thing.
No, can't. Has to be unanimous. Microwave stays.
But it's dangerous.
No one wants it here.
He gave me money, and he may also give me a job when I leave her. So tough titties.
All right, everybody, this is Bob. He's going to help us untangle those legal issues so we're not waiting on key decisions.
Ew! I hate Bob!
What? Why?
Because you chose him! I want a cool boss that'll pick someone that I like.
Okay, well, some of our clients can...
I'm not letting anybody meet Bob, so no one look at Bob. Huh? Nobody look at Bob.
Okay, there's no way he has the authority to do that.
I saw you looking.
What the...
Science science isn't in the Bible. This frightens and arouses me. I am the boss of you. I'm the boss of your whole body. You need to know what's going on in there. Where's the cake? Bring me the cake, or I'll wish you into the cornfield.
Well, the thing is, Leonard...
You can't do anything to me or my cool tie.
See, we all got together, and we voted.
Oh, shit. You're still gonna hire me, right?
The fire tells me secrets.
Anyway, there you have it. Chris Pine, and probably what I think is one of the best roles he's been involved with in quite some time. Well, let's see. What else is in the news? Earlier this week, Google's Threat Analysis Group disclosed a critical vulnerability in Windows in a public post on the company's security blog. Well, the bug itself is very specific. It seems to allow hackers to escape from security sandboxes through a flaw in the Win32K system. But it's serious enough to be categorized as critical, and according to Google, it's being actively exploited. As a result, Google went public just 10 days after reporting the bug to Microsoft before a patch could be coded and deployed. The result is that while Google has already deployed a fix to protect Chrome users, Windows itself is still vulnerable, and now the public knows about it, including you. Google's disclosure provides only a general description of the bug, giving users enough information to recognize a possible attack without making it too easy for criminals to replicate. Exploiting the bug also depends on a separate exploit in Adobe Flash, for which the company has already released a patch. Still, simply knowing that the bug exists will likely spur a lot of criminals to look for viable ways to exploit it against computers that have yet to update their Flash systems. Microsoft harshly criticized the disclosure, and as a matter of fact, on Tuesday, they followed up with more detail in a post by Executive VP Terry Myerson. Myerson attributed the exploitation of the bug to a group called Strontium. It's a Russian-linked group, also called Fancy Bear. Myerson emphasized that Windows 10 users browsing with Edge would be protected from the attack and promised a system-wide patch to be shipped by Tuesday, November 8th. Well, the brief grace period is in accordance with a policy Google put into place 3 years ago, allowing critical vulnerabilities to be disclosed only 7 days after they were reported to the vendor. At the same time, a number of researchers criticized the policy as overly harsh, arguing that 7 days is not enough time to properly respond to a complex vulnerability. This is the first major invocation of the policy in the 3 years since it was put into place, although Google's engineers defended it as necessary given the active exploitation of the bug. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. So far, I haven't noticed any abnormalities here in my system. Last week, though, that was a different story, as you well know, because went for several days without producing any podcast. And I tell you, for a fellow that's used to mass communicating in this way, it was a little unnerving. Maybe a little testy there for a little while. Well, let's see. What else do I have for you on this edition of Haff in the Morning? NFL Network's Brian Baldinger has been suspended for suggesting the Eagles put bounty on Ezekiel Elliott. This is another example of a public official or someone who is out in the public, I guess, so I guess I make him a public official, not really thinking through what they're saying. Or maybe he was thinking through what he was saying, but nevertheless, though, it was in poor taste. And apparently, Baldinger has been suspended for 6 months without pay for suggesting that the Eagles put a bounty on Cowboys running back Ezekiel Elliott. punishment was handed down Wednesday. Baldinger made the controversial remark to a Philadelphia radio station before the Cowboys win over the Eagles last Sunday night. Baldinger, who played for both the Cowboys and the Eagles, has been an analyst for the NFL Network for the past 6 seasons. A former Fox analyst, he currently works on the NFL's Playbook show as well as the NFL Total Access program. But I guess for the next 6 months, he won't be doing any announcing or any formal speculation about football or otherwise. All right, and that's briefly what's on my mind on this Saturday morning. Let's see. Only 15 minutes into the program and have a lot to get to today, including news from the Missouri Net in just a little bit, assuming we have all the right connections there, along with market information for the weekend, today in history, the Writer's Almanac, Composer's Date Book, and, of course, the CBS Weekend Wrap-Up, a look back at the stories making the news this week. Right now, though, let's switch over to Fox Radio News on this Saturday morning.
My morning commentary is brought to you by the good people at Washington Federal. My wife and I choose to bank with Washington Federal for a few reasons. They're responsible with my money, which is always a good thing for a bank. They actually like face-to-face interaction, and they believe a bank should be the foundation of a healthy community. Washington Federal, invested here. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Melania Trump is no ordinary model. Melania Trump gave a speech in Pennsylvania Thursday. Her walk-on music, The Age of Aquarius. And in that spirit, she talked about the need to be kind to each other and about the adopted country she's loved from the time she was a child in her native Slovenia.
America was the word for freedom. America meant if you could dream it, you could become it.
She talked of hard work, rejection, and finally, realizing her dream.
After a 10-year process, which included many visas, I studied for the test and become a U.S. citizen.
Donald Trump has never said exactly how he'll reform the immigration system, but he obviously sees his wife as a model of legal immigration. And the way she got here was to find a business willing to hire her, even though she had no work back home at the time. She then got a 1-year work visa, which she renewed 5 times, and then successfully applied for a green card as a person of, quote, extraordinary ability, using as proof of her extraordinary ability a letter which she wrote herself, and now she's a citizen. Well, around the world, there are millions of people with the same American dream she had, who are out of work as she was, and who would be delighted to write a convincing letter as she did. And if she becomes First Lady, I'm betting one of the first things she'll see from her East Wing window will be thousands of signs saying, I am Melania.
The Osgood File. This is Charles Osgood. Many kids across this country would love to have played competitive sports, but couldn't because of money. That's what it boils down to, says our CBS News colleague James Crawford.
For a lot of these kids,
Go.
America's pastime was a game out of reach. They didn't have the equipment, bats or gloves or cleats.
Some kids wouldn't even play because they're too embarrassed or too shy to say, I don't have this, I don't have that.
But Andre Lee, who heads a Little League in the Washington, D.C. area, says something remarkable is happening in those parts.
Stay with it.
Participation rates have doubled, and all it took was some donated gear.
The last thing in the world these kids expected, says Andre Lee.
Yeah, I'm amazed. Say, like, I can have this glove.
That glove, the shoes, the bats, the bases, all of it came from this Maryland warehouse.
And from this guy, Max Levitt.
We got baseballs over there. We got batting helmets.
Boxes and boxes of used sporting equipment. There's lacrosse, football, even hockey. And before it came here, most of it was just collecting dust in a closet or a garage.
Your kid's in college. He's not playing hockey anymore. What do you do with the hockey equipment?
Levitt founded a nonprofit called Leveling the Playing Field. He takes donations for more affluent families and sports leagues and gives them to those in need.
It's a $5+ billion a year industry with sports equipment in this country. A lot of it's going to waste.
So far, Leveling the Playing Field has given out nearly $2 million in equipment to more than 300 leagues and schools in D.C., Virginia, and Maryland.
It's a pretty serious issue that I think we have found a very simple solution to, which is rare.
How true. The Osgood File. Charles Osgood on the CBS Radio Network.
Fox Fox News Radio, I'm Pam Puso. With just 3 days to go, both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump will barnstorm hard in battleground states, both candidates starting their day in Florida. From there, Clinton will head to Philadelphia, where she'll share a stage with pop star Katy Perry. On Friday in Cleveland, the star power belonged to hip-hop mogul Jay-Z.
Please take this energy out with you. Here in Cuyahoga County, every day is election day. We can have the biggest turnout in history.
Trump says he doesn't need stars to fill his campaign events.
New polls just out have us with a very substantial lead in Ohio, nationwide, many of the states.
The Republican nominee in Wilmington, Ohio, Trump may have the momentum in the closing days of the campaign, but not all of the polls are favorable.
The latest Fox News polls show the candidates equally unpopular, with favorable and unfavorable views virtually tied and leaving them more unpopular than popular. When it comes to who has the better temperament for the presidency, 58% of likely voters say Clinton does, while 57% say Trump does not.
Fox's Carl Cameron. More digging is expected today on property in South Carolina, where a missing woman and one body have been found.
Kayla Brown is free after being found alive, chained by her neck in a metal storage container in Woodruff, South Carolina, about 50 miles from her home.
Fox's Tanya J. Powers. The property's owner, according to tax records, is Todd Colehep. Authorities say he's a convicted sex offender with a violent past. Brown says she saw Colehep shoot and kill her boyfriend. The body has not been identified yet. Safe and sound in Italy, 2 Italians and a Canadian kidnapped in Libya more than a month ago. All 3 men had been doing construction work at an airport in southern Libya. Fox News Radio, fair and balanced.
Insult women.
It's all talk.
Well, here we go again.
It's really bad judgment.
Issues, not insults.
She should be ashamed of herself.
The time for talk is over. Now it's America's turn to make its voice heard. Fox News Channel has election night covered, fair and balanced, up-to-the-minute exit polls, breaking race results, and powerful analysis from the best team in politics. Plus, it all happens live from our new state-of-the-art studio. Fox News Channel has election night covered because we are America's election headquarters.
Fox News Sunday is America's wake-up call with one of the most trusted names in politics, Chris Wallace, asking the tough questions to Washington's power players.
Was that statement by you a mistake?
Engaging America in critical debates on the biggest issues.
Let's get serious about our economic future.
And taking a look ahead to our nation's next big moves.
What should we do about Pakistan going forward?
Only Chris Wallace has America's wake-up call every Sunday on Fox News Sunday. Check your local listings.
The NYPD is in mourning following the shooting death of a sergeant. Police say a man opened fire yesterday on 2 officers as they approached his car. The suspect, who was killed by return fire, had apparently just forced his way into an apartment where his estranged wife was staying. Some tense moments end the school week on a college campus in New Jersey. Authorities say a former student at Rutgers University stabbed 2 people at the business school in Piscataway before turning the weapon on himself. Students received an alert on their smartphones.
A few minutes after I got the RU alert on my phone, I saw a Rutgers ambulance.
All 3 of the injured were taken to hospitals. A dangerous germ has health officials increasingly concerned.
A superbug is a microbe that's drug-resistant, hard to kill, and can be fatal. That's the case for Candida auris. The Centers for Disease Control say health officials have found the first U.S. cases of the globally spreading fungus. It likely arrived in the U.S. a few years ago after being discovered in Japan in 2009. Most of the 13 U.S. cases occurred in New York, New Jersey, Illinois, and Maryland. C. auris is easily spread and easily misidentified as the more common Candida yeast infection, making the CDC director label it an emerging threat. Carmen Roberts, Fox News.
A rare syndrome is under investigation in Washington state.
8 of 9 children hospitalized for an illness that causes varying degrees of paralysis are confirmed to have a rare condition. It's called acute flaccid myelitis, also known as AFM. It affects the nervous system, especially the spinal cord. The affected children lost strength or movement in one or more arms or legs.
Fox's Kathleen Maloney. The exact cause of AFM isn't known. Pam Puso, Fox News Radio.
Well, news from the Missouri Net is on deck next. Right now, an interesting story that I've picked up off of my show prep feed. 37 years ago, Adam Krasper was flown to the United States from South Korea and adopted by an American couple. He was 3 years old at the time. Well, our government is now deporting him back to South Korea, a country that he hasn't been to since his adoption. Well, it seems his American parents never filled out the proper paperwork to get Adam his U.S. citizenship, and 7 years later, they abandoned him, and Krasper went into the foster care system where he says he was abused. He is currently confined in an immigration detention center in Washington State, pending his deportation, but waived an appeal during a hearing recently because he is so desperate to get out of detention that he was even willing to go to a country where he does not speak the language or know the culture. No, it's not an isolated case. Krasper's flight mirrors those of thousands of others who were brought to the United States, but whose adoptive parents didn't secure green cards or U.S. citizenship for them. One group estimates that at least 35,000 inter-country adoptees lack proper U.S. citizenship.
Hi, everybody. Earlier this summer, Michelle, Malia, Sasha, and I headed west to the national parks at Carlsbad Caverns and Yosemite. And I've got to say, it was a breath of fresh air. We explored hundreds of feet of underground, standing beneath dripping stalactites in New Mexico. We hiked up a misty trail next to a waterfall in California. And I even took a few pictures of my own, which I thought were pretty good. But the truth is, no camera, especially one with me behind it, can fully capture the beauty and majesty of America's national parks. From Glacier and Denali to Gettysburg and Seneca Falls, our more than 400 parks and other sites capture our history and our sense of wonder. As FDR once said, there is nothing so American as our national parks. The fundamental idea behind the parks is that the country belongs to the people. This month, we're celebrating the 100th anniversary of the National Park Service. And I want to encourage all of you to find your park so that you and your family can experience these sacred places too. If you're a military family, you can even get in free through Michelle and Joe Biden's Joining Forces initiative. And if you've got a fourth grader in your family, you can get a free pass too by going to everykidinapark.org. I hope you do, because all across the country, the National Park Service is preparing for a big year. We're revitalizing a grove of giant sequoias in Yosemite, repairing the Lincoln Memorial, and enhancing the iconic entrance to our first national park at Yellowstone. As president, I'm proud to have built upon America's tradition of conservation. We've protected more than 265 million acres of public lands and waters, more than any administration in history. We've recovered endangered wildlife species and restored vulnerable ecosystems. We've designated new monuments to Cesar Chavez in California and Pullman Porters in Chicago, and the folks who stood up for equality at Stonewall in New York, to better reflect the full history of our nation. And we've got more work to do to preserve our lands, culture, and history. So we're not done yet. As we look ahead, the threat of climate change means that protecting our public lands and waters is more important than ever. Rising temperatures could mean no more glaciers in Glacier National Park, no more Joshua trees in Joshua Tree National Park. Rising seas could destroy vital ecosystems in the Everglades, even threaten Ellis Island and the Statue of Liberty. So, in the coming years and decades, we have to have the foresight and the faith in our future to do what it takes to protect our parks and protect our planet for generations to come. Because these parks belong to all of us, and they're worth celebrating, not just this year, but every year. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend, and see you in the parks.
Ian Praskaya tasted his first truffle when he was 15 years old. He was out at a fancy restaurant with a friend's family.
The server came over and said, okay, we have a special for tonight, and it's a black truffle ravioli with a foie gras sauce. And it was music to my ears.
So I should explain why a 15-year-old boy was this excited by black truffle ravioli. Ian's family had moved to the country, and Ian had started learning to forage for mushrooms. And for foragers, truffles are almost mythical. They're really hard to find. They grow underground. They're only found in the wild. Nobody has ever figured out how to cultivate them.
And nobody has figured out how to make anything else taste or smell quite like that. There's only one thing that tastes and smells like a truffle.
And, of course, truffles are ridiculously expensive.
Ridiculously.
Ian ordered the truffle dish.
You know, it arrived. It was steaming. It was amazing. There were shavings of truffle on the top. If you cut one of the ravioli in half, there were chunks of black truffle in the ravioli. I mean, it was earthy. It was nutty. It was mysterious. I mean, it was this unknown flavor that I had never tasted. That was it. I mean, it was like such a revelatory experience. You know, I can't even remember, like, you know, where I parked the car yesterday, but yet I remember everything about this moment. It was, to this day, the best dish I've ever had in my life.
Ian became obsessed. He took all his savings and used it to buy a kilo of truffles on an Italian website. But then when they arrived, he realized he had bought way too much. So he took the extra and tried to sell it to restaurants in town.
I showed up on the doorstep with this bag of truffles and a scale I had bought at Target and an invoice book from Staples. And I said, "Hi, I'm Ian. I have some truffles. Would you be interested in buying some truffles?" And I don't know if it was the novelty of this, you know, buck-toothed 15-year-old kid walking in the door with a bag full of truffles, but I sold them and I made a profit.
And that moment is why we are standing in a walk-in refrigerator in Queens at 11 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday, cracking open a shipment of white truffles that Ian has just flown in from Italy. So how much money is in this box?
I don't know, $20,000?
There's $20,000 in this styrofoam box.
Yep.
$20,000? That's about 8 pounds of truffles. And Ian's got to sell all 8 pounds by 5 p.m. today. That's when restaurants start their dinner rush. Also, truffles don't keep. Hi, and welcome to Planet Money. I'm Dan Pashman.
And I'm Stacey Vanek Smith. Today on the show, we follow Ian as he hustles his way through some of the finest kitchens in New York selling truffles.
We battle traffic, parking cops, smugglers, penny-pinching chefs, and the cruel mistress of time.
Also, we try to figure out what it is about truffles that makes people pay so much for them.
Support for this podcast and the following message come from Salesforce. Salesforce helps marketers get smarter about their customers and plan better campaigns that blur the lines between marketing, sales, and service, all in the name of customer success. Salesforce powers marketing for the world's most innovative brands, from tailored emails to engaging mobile apps, social media, and targeted ads. That's great marketing made by you with Salesforce. Connect to your customers in a whole new way. See a demo at salesforce.com/NPR podcast.
Before Ian can go and sell these truffles, he has to make sure that they look okay. He cuts open the box, which is covered with U.S. Customs stickers.
What is this moment like for you, Ian?
Pure anxiety, honestly.
That's because so many things can go wrong between the time the truffles come out of the ground in Italy and the time Ian gets them in Queens. They could get stolen. They could be left on an airport tarmac. The airline maybe doesn't refrigerate them properly. They could even have bugs.
The truffles have already been on this amazing journey. I mean, 2 days ago, these were underground in a forest in Tuscany, and they were found using dogs that are trained to sniff them out.
I'm just removing all the ice packs from the top of the box.
Oh, is that the smell?
That is the smell.
What do you think?
Oh, my God. That smell.
It's not good. It's like...
I love it.
Burnt something. It's like burnt.
To me, it's like mushrooms combined with dirty socks in a good way.
What is dirty socks in a good way?
Ian takes out a truffle. He holds it up to the light, smells it. It's kind of round and lumpy. It's sort of golden white. It almost looks like Yukon Gold potatoes.
This one is very nice.
Ian looks really relieved because he's banking on these truffles for his business, Regalis Foods.
White truffles are only in season for about 12 weeks. And during that time, Ian makes most of his money for the year.
Ian puts the truffles into a dented styrofoam cooler covered with packing tape, loads them into the trunk of his car, and we're off. All right. You guys ready? Do it. Okay.
Ian needs to sell these $20,000 worth of truffles by 5 p.m. because that is when restaurants start gearing up for dinner.
Yeah, and if he doesn't do it, he's in trouble because literally every second that passes, the truffles are losing value.
Right, because truffles are mostly water, and every moment that they are out of the ground, they are losing water. They're drying up.
So it's like with every red light that we hit, a few pennies fall out of your pocket.
Pretty much. I would say I lose about 3% a day. So if we do the math, I'm probably going to lose about $1,500 today. Just in evaporation loss.
Just in the trunk.
In the trunk.
Do you think about that when you're sitting in traffic?
I mean, I've learned not to.
A few red lights later, we arrive at Peoria in the West Village. It's noon.
Are we backing down a one-way street?
Illegally backing, yeah. Okay. I'm going to back down the street. This guy is giving us the stink eye.
So you're parking like in a red zone right now?
I'm in a red zone.
How much money do you budget per year in parking tickets?
It's probably $10,000.
$10,000 a year in parking tickets? Really?
Yeah.
You just park wherever you just got to park. The truffles will not wait?
They can't wait.
Ian jumps out of the car, grabs the styrofoam cooler, balances his scale on top of it, and we rush into the restaurant.
All right, let's make it quick.
How are you? Truffle Man.
Peoria is this really romantic, kind of airy restaurant, and the chef, Christopher Cipollone, meets us in the kitchen.
Ian's unwrapping the cooler right now. What are you thinking at this moment, Chef, as he unwraps? What's going through your mind?
I'm pretty excited. I'm always excited by what Ian brings me.
Chef Chris starts poking through the cooler, looking through the truffles.
These are actually gorgeous. And we've been doing quite well with the truffles, my friend. So we're doing a simple handmade ricotta straccianati, and we just glaze it in butter and pasta water, and then just shave the truffles table side.
How much is the dish?
The dish is only $85. It's a steal.
Dan, this blew my mind. I mean, think about it. This is like pasta and butter, which is basically what you feed a child who has the stomach flu. I mean, it is some of the cheapest food you can get anywhere. And Chef Chris is charging $85 for a plate of buttered pasta.
Well, buttered pasta with truffles on top.
Yes.
And there is some logic to it because the idea is you want something kind of simple so that all the focus is on the truffles. You know, like you don't hang the Mona Lisa on a plaid wall, right? You put it on a white wall with a big spotlight on it. And pasta with butter is the culinary equivalent of a white wall. And how many grams of truffles go into that?
5 grams is the weight of a nickel. That is how expensive truffles are. For that amount, Chef Chris is paying Ian about $25. And he's charging his diners about $85. That is a $60 markup.
That's a powerful food right there.
Yes, it is. And Chef Chris says people are happy to pay this amount because truffles are special. You can't get them all the time. Most places don't have them. And they're just excited to have this experience. Do you have customers come in especially because they want truffles?
Yes, definitely. Every year, people kind of love to see what we are doing with truffles this year and what kind of preparations we're doing. And
Chef Chris buys just under a half pound of truffles, which is, just a few truffles, each one the size of a racquetball. We peeked over at the bill.
That's a lot of money for truffles. $967.
It'll be gone in a couple of days. It's all good.
Those few truffles will make about 40 plates of pasta. And the profit from those plates of pasta will be more than $2,000.
So this whole time that we're talking to Chef Chris, Ian is texting madly on his phone, glancing toward the door every few minutes, tapping his toe on the floor. He hasn't even sold a pound of truffles yet. And we got 4.5 hours to go until the restaurants start dinner service. Ian packs up the truffles, and we're off.
That's it. Wow. In and out. You guys are efficient.
Yeah, totally.
See you guys soon.
Bye. And
no ticket.
No ticket.
The next deal went down literally on a street corner. Ian pulls over. Private chef of a wealthy family comes out. They pop the trunk. She goes through the truffles. And within a couple minutes, another sale.
How'd it go?
Good. Over 4,000 sold.
$4,000?
Yeah.
Between the private chef and Peoria, Ian has sold $5,000 worth of truffles. But he still has $15,000 more to sell. So we drive to the house of a hedge fund billionaire. Ian jumps out of the car, sells him a pound of truffles.
Yeah, I guess, he's got to put it in his coffee or something. You need that.
Yes. By now, it is 1:30, and the dinner rush starts in 3.5 hours.
Almost there.
So how are we doing so far clockwise?
We're a little behind.
The whole time we're with Ian, he is just in the zone. I mean, he's texting, he's driving, he's making deals on the phone and in person. The guy just has so much focus. And he's only 24 years old, which I think Stacey reminded both of us that we are total failures.
Also old.
Yes.
But Ian's been doing this a long time. He came to New York when he was 18 years old. And at the time, he bought a minivan, and he would load it up every day with truffles and fresh mushrooms.
I would drive around to restaurants and beg chefs to come out to the van and take a look at what was inside my van. I was working 16-hour days, like hustling, and, I had so much stress. I was losing hair, and I had this weird, acne, flare-up, and I was embarrassed to, go outside, and I would just make an entire vat of macaroni and cheese and basically just, watch Netflix and, cry myself to sleep on weekends, and it sucked.
Things are much better for Ian these days. In fact, this year, he is on track to make $6 million in sales.
And the whole time we're driving around with him, I was just so struck by the contrast between those huge dollar figures that we keep seeing and hearing and just the ragtag nature of the operation itself. I mean, he's got these styrofoam coolers in the back of a rental car because his other car broke down. He's 24 years old, sort of unshaven and looking somewhat sleep-deprived. And so he has, more in common, it seems, with a mid-level weed dealer than a luxury food titan. But that's what he is. I mean, he just signed a multi-million-dollar deal with Williams-Sonoma to sell truffle salt and truffle oil.
But Ian told us he is never going to stop doing this fresh truffle hustle. It is the centerpiece of his business. It's how he makes most of his money, and it's how he keeps up his relationships with the best chefs in New York, relationships that he made when he started selling mushrooms out of his minivan. In fact, one of his first customers, who used to buy things out of his minivan, is where we are headed next. That is Lure Fish Bar, and the chef is a guy named Josh Capon.
This is one chef that loves to bargain.
So what's your strategy going in a situation like this?
Maybe start a little high, see what he says.
All right. We're double parked. We're going in.
All right, fingers crossed, no tickets. The restaurant's packed. It's the middle of the lunch rush, so we wait a little while for the chef to come out. Ian sets down his cooler. He's still texting. And then finally, the kitchen doors open, and the chef comes out.
Hey, Josh. How are you? What's up, buddy? My name is Josh Capon. We are here at the legendary Lure Fish Bar with my good buddy Ian. Ian's actually in my phone as Ian Truffle Boy.
Chef Josh starts inspecting the truffles.
It's always a pleasure to see him, and what exciting, beautiful, and in this case, gorgeous smelling white truffles from Piemonte, Tuscany. Tuscany, one of the truest, beautiful pleasures of the world. I went there on my honeymoon. I stayed in a castle. It was stupendous. And just smelling these white truffles, I'm transported back to that castle with my wife where we drank champagne with fresh peaches off the trees and made love in the forest together amongst the hogs. Is this for radio or TV?
If it was for TV, I think that the screen just went dark.
I think we just went NC-17.
Totally. So Chef Josh picks out a few truffles and piles them on Ian's little kitchen scale. And then they both start punching numbers into their own calculators on their phones.
I say we knock this number down to $1,200 even.
All right, we'll do it.
$1,000 even.
I can't say $1,000.
Come on, $1,100.
I can't.
At the same time, look at that. Ladies and gentlemen, $14 just came off the bill. Amazing.
Chef Josh buys 5 truffles for $1,200.
Yeah, and they fit in his 2 hands.
Chef Josh tells us he plans to serve them on a lobster risotto later tonight and on this special cheeseburger that he makes at the burger place across the street. It is a $68 cheeseburger, which he says has gotten quite a reputation.
You got to just come have the white truffle burger at Burger and Barrel. And it'll literally blow your mind.
We rush back to the car. Ian still has about $12,000 worth of truffles left to sell. And it's 2:30.
Our next stop is Minetta Tavern. It's a well-known, pretty high-end place in the West Village. The chef is Dan Silverman. He's a tall, kind of reserved guy. He says he's been seeing a lot of truffle dealers around lately.
Are there a lot of people who sell truffles?
Oh, my God. Yeah, there are. This time of year, people just wandering off the street with, like, checkered cloth bundles full of truffles. There's just, like, random people, always, every year.
Smuggle them,
Probably. I like to buy from the people that I know.
And here's the thing. There are Ians all over New York City right now. You could be passing one on the street right now with a backpack full of 20 grand worth of truffles. And some of these people are from other companies, but a lot of them are just hustlers. They're walking from one restaurant to another with a backpack full of truffles that they smuggled from Europe.
And you could see why they would do this. I mean, one truffle can cost $1,000, and you can fit a lot of truffles into a suitcase. When we get back in the car, Ian tells us, yeah, there are a lot of truffle smugglers in New York right now, and they've really hurt his business.
They cut out the middleman, they don't pay customs fees, and they've cut his profits in half. Ian says he used to make 20% profit on truffles. Now, more like 10%.
Ritzy restaurants, like the 2 and 3 Michelin-starred restaurants, are the ones that love to negotiate because they're getting so many different truffle people in the door trying to sell them product that they have a choice of who they buy from.
At this point, it's 3:30, and Ian's got to leave us. He's got 90 minutes left to unload like $10,000 worth of truffles, and let's face it, Stacey, we were slowing him down.
So Ian drops us off in Soho, and at this point we are both starving, and we both smell like dirty socks.
In a good way.
In a good way.
Stacey, in a good way.
Take your word for it.
Right.
And I mean, we've been watching thousands of dollars change hand for these truffles, and I still have never tried one. I have no idea what the fuss is all about.
That's right, Stacey. And because we're consummate journalists, we head to Burger and Barrel to try Chef Josh Capon's $68 truffle burger.
This is the third week that we've been getting in white truffles, and in honor of that, we're doing our famous white truffle burger. I highly recommend it.
I would like to order that.
Our burgers arrive, and they are beautiful. The truffles are sliced thin and fanned out over the top of the burger so you can see them. 5 grams, apparently, worth of truffles. We took our bites.
Okay, this is it. This is the big moment.
I'm going in.
I don't know how to describe it. It's like shoes. It tastes like shoes, smoked shoes.
I told you, dirty socks in a good way.
Yeah.
See?
It came back around.
Yeah.
Dirty socks in a good way.
Right.
It does taste like dirty socks in a good way. It's the best description. I'm sorry I doubted you. I'm in.
All right.
I'm in.
See, Stacey, what I tell you, dirty socks in a good way.
Dirty socks in a good way. We actually called up some food scientists to figure out what this dirty sock thing was. Like, what is it about this flavor that captivates people so much that changed Ian's life? And it turns out that truffle smell and taste comes from this molecule called androstenone. And it is found in sweat and urine.
Yeah, farmers will spray female pigs with androstenone to get them in the mood, which is hot. And, I think I get it. I mean, I know why humans are obsessed with truffles. It's because they kind of smell like us.
We are eating humanity. The thing that we most want from the finest, fussiest restaurants in the world is sweat, sex, and urine. That is why we love truffles so much.
You'd think it'd be easier to replicate.
And cheaper.
Yeah, totally. But I do think there's also something about this high-low combination with the way the restaurants get the food. It's like one of their finest, most desired ingredients, and they're getting it in this sort of sketchy, back alley kind of way.
Right. People wandering in off the street with napkins full of truffles or styrofoam coolers. Speaking of which, we checked back in with Ian to see how the rest of his day had gone.
Yeah, and he probably should have kept us around a little bit longer because we were his good luck charm, and after he left us, his car got towed.
with $5,000 worth of truffles in the trunk.
Right, which is like your car getting towed with $5,000 worth of cash in the trunk.
Cash that is disintegrating.
Right.
But this is where all of Ian's calls and texting that he'd been doing all day paid off, because he'd actually been taking orders from chefs all over the country for any leftover truffles he might have. So as soon as he got his car out of the impound lot, he sped to the FedEx office at JFK Airport.
And in Ian's world, this is a buzzer beater, because there in the parking lot, he packed up the truffles and got them sent out just before the final FedEx deadline. Which means that if you recently ate truffles in Chicago or LA or San Francisco, it's quite possible that they were packed up in the trunk of Ian's car.
Dan, I had so much fun reporting this story with you, and you do stuff like this all the time on your podcast, The Sporkful.
Yeah, so The Sporkful is a podcast where we obsess about food to learn more about people. One of our recent shows was all about a food called pork roll, also known as Taylor ham. It's an iconic food in New Jersey, but people there have been fighting about it for 150 years. So we find out why.
And if you want some light reading, Ian actually has a book coming out. It is called Truffle Boy. It comes out in February, and you can pre-order it now. It's all about his business hustling truffles all over New York.
We also want to thank Helen Hollyman from the website Munchies, who introduced us to Ian, and smell scientist Avery Gilbert.
We always love to hear what you think of the show. You can send us an email, planetmoney@npr.org, or you can find us on Facebook or Twitter. Today's episode was produced by the wonderful Elizabeth Kulas. And as we are ramping up to this big presidential election, check out the NPR Politics podcast. They have new episodes coming out every day, taking a look at this big moment for our country. You can find that on NPR One or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Stacey Vanek Smith.
And I'm Dan Pashman. Thanks for listening.
More of Haff in the Morning coming your way in just a moment. As a matter of fact, we'll have a look at weekend market information, along with Today in History, the Writer's Almanac with Garrison Keillor, and the Composer's Date Book. Right now, though, it's the weekend, and many of us probably take care of house cleaning chores on the weekend. For example, you touch it, other people touch it, but do you ever clean it? Well, this sounds even dirtier than I intended. But apparently, I'm talking about everyday items here that most people never think to swab down, such as credit cards, ceiling fans, and toilet paper holders. Yeah, the Huffington Post Style List assembled a list of the top 10 most dirty, dusty, and germy places in your home and how to clean them. For example, toilet roll holders. When you flush the commode, water inside the toilet bowl is sprayed around the area, including the toilet bowl holder. So disinfect it at least once a month with a sanitizing wipe, or clean it with bleach and water solution. I recommend more often. Another one are toothbrush holders. Want to see something really gross? Well, take your toothbrush out of your holder and peer inside. Do you see mold, discoloration, grime? Well, that could end up in your mouth. Pour a solution of 1 part bleach and 3 parts water to the toothbrush holder and let it soak for about an hour. Rinse and dry upside down on a dish rack. And something I never would have thought of, as I said, credit cards and debit cards. You're not the only one handling your credit and debit cards. Other people touch them too. And who knows when they last washed their hands or what they touched just even 5 minutes ago. Even if you only swipe your card and never hand it over to anyone else, what is lurking inside that card swipe machine or ATM? Grab some disinfectant wipes and take a minute or two to clean your credit cards, and do let them dry completely before returning them to your wallet. Otherwise, you'll have an even bigger problem.
Hey everyone, Robert Smith here. Last week we played an episode from a series that we made in 2012 when we created the perfect presidential candidate. He was a fake candidate, but his policy ideas were great, at least according to economists. Today, you will hear us bring our candidate to the people.
Previously on Planet Money. 6 economists from across the political spectrum.
Dean Baker, co-director.
Russ Roberts. I'm Luigi Zingales.
He's left of center.
Hardcore free market, pro-market, but not necessarily pro-business.
Thrown together with one impossible mission: to come up with an economic plan to rescue the economy. One catch: in order to save the country, they're going to have to work together. to restructure the tax code.
The corporate income tax makes no sense whatsoever.
Eliminate cherished deductions.
The mortgage interest deduction.
To preserve the environment.
Tax, energy use, or carbon emissions.
And finally, deal once and for all with the scourge of illegal drugs.
Make them legal.
And maybe, just maybe, this ragtag team can come up with a platform that every economist would love and every presidential candidate would hate, except for our fake one.
God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
Hello and welcome to Planet Money. I'm Caitlin Kenny.
And I'm Robert Smith. And Caitlin, this is it. For 6 months now, we have been hatching this plan to create a fake presidential candidate based on the best ideas that economics has to offer. We've done Planet Money episodes where we created the platform for a presidential candidate. We hashed out disagreements. We brought in political consultants who laughed at us at first, but then said, no, we can help you sell this plan. We have done it all. And today,
we take it to the people.
Yeah.
At least a very carefully selected and screened group of people. We take this to a focus group in D.C. and ask, would anyone vote for these crazy ideas anyway?
Planet Money is supported by Betterment, the largest independent robo-advisor with more than 180,000 customers and over $5.5 billion under management. Betterment makes it easier and less expensive to invest for your personal financial goals. With a beautiful user interface and smart, cutting-edge technology, Betterment brings you sophisticated, personalized financial advice, all at a lower cost. Planet Money listeners get up to 6 months free. To learn more about Betterment, visit betterment.com/planetmoney.
In order to see what real people think, you have to go to a very fake place.
We're in Washington, D.C., in this very generic office tower. Probably one of the blandest conference rooms you've ever seen.
And that's actually intentional because this is where they do the focus groups. And nothing is supposed to be controversial here. It's supposed to be very bland, nothing to distract real voters from their real opinions. You want pure information in this room.
And I got to say, it was pretty sweet. We got to sit behind this two-way mirror looking into the conference room, and we watched as they led 10 independent voters in. And it was cool because we could see them, we could hear everything they were saying, but they couldn't see us.
Well, thanks everybody for coming out. We'll try
and this is something that you never get to do in real life. Listen to a bunch of people talking about you, talking about Planet Money, talking about our economists' ideas, and they have no idea that we're listening to them. I feel like I'm eavesdropping on my friends.
Another thing that's weird is that the people in the focus group, they're in this sterile room. It's really bright, but we're here behind the glass. It's dimly lit. There's some rows of seats. We have free drinks and all-you-can-eat M&Ms. It's kind of like being in a movie theater.
Ipsos Public Affairs in Washington, D.C. kindly agreed to let us borrow their focus group for the night. Michael Gross is the moderator, and he told us what to look for. He says you're basically looking for something called resonance, which is not only what people say, but what they don't say.
Part of the beauty of focus groups and having people, be able to see them is you can see the small little visual and physical cues.
Like what?
You'll see people, kind of cocking the head, maybe start to nod a little bit. Like, I get the concept, and yes, I like it.
So I should be taking notes on that? I should just be watching for that, or?
Yeah, you should be watching for visual cues. Oftentimes, you'll see people, if they're not really interested in something, they'll push back from the table a little bit, or they'll cross their arms in front of them, which means they really don't care about talking about that kind of subject.
We move our chairs up about 2 inches from the glass so we can catch every facial expression.
Yeah, and Julia Clark, who runs the political team at Ipsos, sits next to us. And Michael, the moderator, goes into the room with the focus group, and he hands out our plan. So everything we've worked on over the last 6 months is now a stack of papers. And each page has one idea, one item of the presidential platform on it. And he encourages the focus group to start going through it with a pen. He asks them to cross out what they don't like and circle what they do.
There was a lot of crossing out.
The first idea is one that our economists from across the political spectrum loved. It's to get rid of the mortgage interest tax deduction. Now, if you own a home, you can write off a big chunk of your mortgage on your taxes. Our economists say what this really is a huge government subsidy for people who happen to own rather than rent.
Michael read off some of the arguments for eliminating the deduction.
Mortgage interest deduction is an extremely regressive form of taxation and is extremely perverse. that we shouldn't be helping Bill Gates or whoever subsidizing them to get an expensive home. Rich people get a larger subsidy, which causes the price of houses to increase, making homes less affordable for poor people.
And what they don't know is those are actual quotes from previous shows that Planet Money has done, but he's just reading them off. And people, when they hear this, they shake their heads. Like, they hate everything he's saying. On the left side of the table is a well-dressed older woman. Her name is Irene. We have a briefing book that tells us about all the participants here. And this tells us that she has a high school education. And although it doesn't say it, we can tell woman owns her own home.
3/4 of your mortgage goes to interest. So if they eliminated that deduction, it would be like you're throwing your money out the window every month. If you didn't get that deduction, get something for it.
Once people start talking about this, you can pretty much tell who owns a home and who doesn't, because the homeowners hate this idea for a very simple reason. The amount that they pay in taxes is going to go up. That is inevitable. And then the moderator explains another argument about eliminating the mortgage interest tax deduction, and it's this. This deduction, this subsidy by the government, actually makes the price of homes too high. If you eliminate it, then the price of homes will actually go down. And you can see people just look terrified at this prospect.
Yeah, Marilyn M., we know from our book that she makes under $25,000 a year. She has some college education, and she seems to sway the group when she speaks. They really listen to her. She hates it.
If housing prices go down lower, this is going to be very dangerous, especially for a society that's top-heavy with baby boomers that are aging.
There were actually economists that came up with this. I just want to read you a couple of comments.
People actually made a sour face when the moderator said the word economists. They had this visceral reaction oh, economists.
And this was something our political consultants warned us about. They were like, listen, no one's going to care that economists designed this plan. People don't particularly like economists. It turns out they were right.
Yeah, and it gets worse because it turns out it's not just the economists they hate. They hate the very language that the economists use to help sell the plan. Even the words are turning off the voters. There was one young woman, Ava A., and she jumped in to say that she hated one particular word that she heard, eliminate.
I feel like anytime you eliminate something or get rid of it, it's going to backfire in a different area.
There's lots of nodding now around the table. Julia from Ipsos, she leans over to us as soon as she hears this. She says, listen, this kind of thing from a focus group participant, this is exactly what the political pros are listening for. If they hear this, they might not want to use the word eliminate.
Those words scare her, and they wouldn't want to use those words in a communication because it would be off-putting, perhaps to her, perhaps to people from her demographic.
I want to strongly moderate taxes.
This is why candidates sound the way they do oftentimes, because their statements have been focus grouped to death. And it does mean they modulate their own opinions so strongly to try to line them up with American voters that some of probably their own true views are lost. I think that's almost certainly the case. And it's the challenge of focus groups. They're useful, but to what extent do you want to react to them, and to what extent do you want to fly in the face of public opinion? I mean, it's a balance for politicians to deal with.
It's better to know now than later.
Absolutely. Even if you're going to stick to your guns and say something unpopular, at least you know how people are going to react, and that's useful too.
It's not just the words that people hate that the pros are listening for. They're also listening for the way people describe things, the language that they use. Because what better way to appeal to the average voter than to use something that came out of their own mouth? Julia says that when you see those ads that feature this real person or that real person, some of those people actually came out of focus groups just like this.
Yeah, that's what we were kind of hoping for. But at least when it comes to the mortgage interest tax deduction, there were no nice words. We're not going to have that option.
Okay, so quick show of hands. How many of you would vote for a candidate that had this as part of their economic policy?
Without specifics? With no specifics?
As written. Absolutely not.
Nope. Okay.
Nobody raised their hand. Nobody in the entire room.
Person.
Oh, no.
I'm scared. Blank number one, they hate it.
Yep, no one supports eliminating the mortgage interest tax deduction. Not a single person.
And this was just the start of it. It was a long night. People either hated the plans or they didn't understand them. Sometimes it was both.
Yeah. So as the moderator is going through our list of ideas, vote after vote turns against us. The economists had this idea about taxing health benefits. That's rejected almost immediately. Another idea, which was to move away from an income tax to more of a consumption-based tax, kind of like the VAT they have in Europe, that's dismissed as weird and vague, two actual words used by focus group participants.
Another plank in our platform was eliminating the corporate income tax. The economists argued it taxes something we want to encourage. Corporations making a profit, we want them to reinvest the money so that they can go out and hire people.
Yeah, when people argue that we should have a high corporate income tax, what they're really saying is we want to soak the rich. We want the rich to pay their fair share. And the economists argue just don't do that through corporations. If you want to tax rich people, then tax rich people. Leave the corporations to create jobs, and if they pay out any of their profits to their shareholders in dividends, then you can tax it.
But this idea, it gets Steve to lean forward. He's sitting at the end of the table, college-educated, middle-aged, and he just isn't buying it.
So if you don't tax the companies, then where are you going to get the money from, which is like Kevin said.
It is so strange to sit behind the glass and listen to something like this because you want to go in and argue with the guy because our economists have thought of this. You know, they've described where the money can come from and you can get it in other places. It's just basically shifting the tax burden in what they would say is a more fair and effective and productive. It doesn't matter because I'm not allowed to argue with the guy. And Julia from Ipsos, she says this reaction happens all the time.
And you've got a client behind the screen and the message testing is going badly. It's all that you can do to keep that client from marching out of this room into the focus group room and explaining to Joe from Cincinnati why his position is wrong. Of course, if you have to work that hard to convince someone of your point of view, you've already lost the argument when it comes to communications and messaging. But I've definitely been in this room before with a client who has to be restrained, literally, from going around the corner to have a chat with those people in the focus group room.
Our moderator saves one particular idea for last, and you can see why he wanted to keep it at the end. So every economist agreed absolutely that we should legalize marijuana. They said making it illegal just drives up the price, makes drug dealers rich. The government gets no tax revenue for it. And yet the government is on the hook to build prisons to put all those people who smoke pot into the prisons. So they agree that this just economically makes no sense whatsoever.
But the folks at Ipsos, Julia and Michael, they predicted that talking about something like drugs was bound to divide any group. And they were right. People don't calmly think about this issue and consider both sides. They're just either immediately for it or against it.
You can really go to jail for a small amount of weed, and it's not okay. Marijuana helps a lot of people. It can be social, it can be for recreational use, and I guess creative. It makes you creative in some ways if you're artistic.
I have enough faith in my own creativity that I don't need to make myself artificial in my brain to be creative. It's in me. And I don't need a drug to turn the key. And I don't think anyone else does either, unless you become dependent on it. But, I mean, that's going off kind of the subject.
That was Mark and Marilyn. They are never going to agree on this issue. And in fact, that's true of the entire focus group. When they took the vote, the group is evenly split on legalizing drugs. And in some ways, this was a tiny victory because legalizing drugs did better than just about any other plank on our platform. But you cannot build an entire campaign, one approved by economists, on legalizing pot. It's just not going to work.
But little did they know we had our secret weapon.
Yes.
We have been talking for weeks to political consultants, to advertising experts, to the best in the business. And we've said, listen, we know these ideas are going to be a tough sell. What do you got for us? Help us convince people that they would vote for this candidate. So we told the moderator, bring out the ads.
Okay, picture a guy in a casual shirt. He's talking straight to the camera. He's standing in front of some out-of-focus foliage, and he's going to talk about the Economist's plan. Now, our moderator just read out the copy to the focus group, but we're going to do it with an actor. Listen.
Courage. Common sense. I know that to fix our economy, we need some hard truths. Legalizing marijuana would save billions in law enforcement and prosecution, add to the tax base, and stop making drug dealers rich. My bold jobs plan would end the corporate income tax so American companies can reinvest and create American jobs. It's about hard truths. It's about change. It's about time.
This ad is by political consultant Joe Slade White. He's out of Buffalo, and he's won a ton of awards. He's been doing this for years. But right away, with the focus group, we could see that it wasn't quite working. By including all the controversial parts of the plan, people just had this immediate visceral reaction to the part of the plan they didn't like, or maybe more than one part of the plan they didn't like. The ad restarted that whole argument we had about marijuana.
I don't think it matters what he says, because the legalization of marijuana is one of those very specific, polarizing issues like abortion, like gay marriage, and you're for it or you're against it, and there's nothing the candidate's going to say that's going to change your mind.
Okay, stay away from drugs in a political campaign. It took us a long time to learn that, but we learned it.
Okay, but we had another ad. This one came from the Strategy Group for Media. Alex Tornero is their creative director, and he took a different approach. Rather than putting in a bunch of ideas, he focused on just one: eliminating the mortgage interest deduction. Hit it.
It's time for real tax reform to help the middle class. For years, our country has subsidized home mortgage payments, a deduction that benefits the wealthy and pushes up home prices for everyone else. It's unfair, and I believe it's time we end that deduction and return the savings to you by bolstering education, improving services for seniors, and funding job training programs.
Okay, I'm just going to pop in here for a quick second because I should mention here that the ad guys came up with the bit about children and seniors, not the economists. They never mentioned that. Okay, proceed.
Renting, owning, large house or small, American families deserve a fair tax plan that helps every home. I'm an actor giving voice to a plan designed by economists, and I approve this message.
So after the moderator reads out this ad, Mark at the end of the table leans in a little bit and says,
"Thumbs up."
Seriously, they liked it. Now remember, every single person voted against this when we use the economist language. Now, even Marilyn, the one who was so concerned about house prices for baby boomers, even Marilyn kind of liked it.
I think that it's an effective ad.
So we're feeling pretty good. We're thinking we are actually going to pull this off. With the help of these experts, we're going to convince people that these are ideas they would actually vote for, things that they like.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, it turned out the effect was fleeting. After the focus group wrapped up and people were heading out, I pulled Marilyn aside and said, "Tell me more about how you really liked that ad."
And she said that although she liked the part about fair taxes, she said the ad left you with a big question.
Wait a minute. What are they eliminating? How does that help? But in that quick moment, it feels good.
And I guess this is why political advertising gets a bad rap as manipulative. But I was thinking, there is a serious point here, which is if you can make someone feel good about an issue, even for a quick moment, then maybe they can consider an idea that otherwise they would have completely shut out before. So the whole thing, the emotional content, the kids, the seniors, they're stressing a fair tax plan, a fair tax plan. In some ways, all we did was to open just a tiny door, open a door that says the mortgage interest tax deduction, we can at least just talk about this. We can at least consider what the economists had to say.
One small problem. Our economists, the folks who came up with these ideas, they hated it.
Yeah. They spent a long time explaining the intricate logical reasoning behind their plan, and then they see 29 seconds of, let's be honest, not the most sophisticated thinking in the world. So, I called up Luigi Zingales from the University of Chicago, and he looked at the ad and he said, you picked the wrong argument. He said that we should have pointed out that by eliminating the mortgage interest tax deduction, we could lower tax rates for everyone.
In the ad, you're pushing more. We can spend the money in a lot of other ways, education, this and that, which is also true, but it's not the way I will sell it.
Dean Baker, another one of our economists, he liked the part about fairness. He says he uses that argument himself. But he said that perhaps we should have pointed out that the mortgage interest deduction doesn't save as much money as most people think. In other words, we could have argued instead that getting rid of that deduction won't hurt too much.
everybody has ideas after you make your ad, right? Catherine Baker from Harvard, she agreed with Luigi and Dean Baker about some of those criticisms, but she came away with sort of a bigger lesson. Perhaps, she said, she and the other economists, perhaps they should stick to the classroom where they have hours and hours and hours to explain this stuff.
From an academic perspective, where we try to spend a lot of time going into the details of the pros and the cons of things, that just doesn't seem compatible with the 30-second soundbite.
We're going to let you decide what you think. I gotta say, though, I think we did a pretty good job encapsulating that sort of warm, fuzzy feeling you get from a political ad where you just look at the candidate and say, hey, I could talk to that guy. He looks friendly. He's not wearing a tie. Anyway, check him out yourself. npr.org/money.
Yeah, I am a little bit impressed with how political the ad is. If it were on TV, you wouldn't think twice. You wouldn't think that's a radical economist plan. You would just think, another political ad. But I was thinking there actually is something a little revolutionary about this whole project that we've done, and that's this. Our candidate, our fake Planet Money candidate, is not going to get a single vote. I think we can agree with that. But maybe the next candidate that comes along, a real candidate that comes along and suggests one of these economist-approved ideas, maybe that candidate won't sound as radical because he or she can say, at least I'm not as crazy as the Planet Money guy. On our website, you can watch the 2 political ads we made for our candidate. That's npr.org/money. Tell us what you think of the episode. Find us on Facebook or Twitter or email us, planetmoney@npr.org. Today's rerun was produced by Raina Cohen. The election is almost here, and the NPR Politics Podcast is counting down to Election Day with new episodes every day. Every day now through November 9th. After November 9th, who knows? All bets are off. So you should subscribe or listen now on the NPR One app. I'm Robert Smith. Thanks for listening.
This Marketplace podcast is brought to you by Brandeis International Business School. Learn to network, study, or conduct business around the world with global dexterity, an award-winning book on stepping out of your cultural comfort zone. Get a free copy from Brandeis International Business School at brandeis.edu/podcast.
It's Jobs Day Friday, so we've got that going for us. Some internet security news you can use as well. And to wrap it all up, an interview with director Barry Jenkins about his new film. It's called Moonlight. From American Public Media, this is Marketplace. In Los Angeles, I'm Kai Ryssdal. Friday, the 4th of November. Good to have you along, everybody. Today being the third Friday after the conclusion of the reference week, which is, should you be curious, the week that includes the 12th of the month. Yes, that was geeky. We learned this morning a net 161,000 people got jobs in this economy last month, and that the unemployment rate notched down to 4.9%. It is also, if it has somehow escaped your notice, the last Friday before Election Day, so we are going to spend the next 4 minutes or so talking about the intersection of those two things. We're going to do it with Neela Richardson. She's at Redfin. John Carney is at the Wall Street Journal, and they are both in our studios in New York City. Hey, everybody.
Hi, Kai.
Hi, Kai. All right, Neela, let's start with you and this jobs report. 4.9%, 161,000 new jobs, as we said. We've got a package on wages coming up afterward, and I know that's your big thing. But the good news on wages takes us to a place where maybe this growth can keep going, yeah?
Yes, we finally got the Goldilocks level of employment, right? It's not too hot, it's not too cold, it's perfectly proportioned in all the right places, which is that big pop in wage growth. And so the great news is it's good, showing some momentum going into the fourth quarter. It also means that it's an average enough jobs report that it's great political fodder. You can spin it any direction you want. It's not strong enough, it's too strong. Right. So it feeds into the election cycle, but overall, it's showing a fairly healthy economy ending 2016.
And spun it has indeed been, John. But I am obliged to note that the S&P 500 closed today, even with its jobs report, ending its longest losing streak in 36 years, 9 down days on the S&P. That has to be election agita, right?
Sure. There's a lot of election agita. But I will say,
it is 9 down days, but it is the shallowest 9 down days in history. We're down like 3% over those days.
Yeah.
The last time we were down for 9 days in a row, I think we were down 20%. So it is there is a little agita. I do think that if it wasn't just spun by politicians, by the way, today's jobs number. There were people, Wall Street analysts, on both sides of the question of what does this mean for a Fed rate hike in December. Some people said, well, it doesn't necessarily give them the green light. And Fannie Mae's chief economist said it's a done deal. It's definitely going to happen in December. Conflicting reports on both sides.
We're going to pass on the inner workings of the mind of Janet Yellen for now, Neela, and let's play it forward to what happens on Wednesday morning, assuming this thing's wrapped up Tuesday night. Whoever gets this job come Tuesday has a bunch of work ahead of him or herself to take this economy to a place where maybe everybody's feeling the benefits, right?
That's right, because what's missing, what's obscured in the jobs report is the shift from manufacturing to service jobs, lower paying service jobs. And that feeds into the crux of the angst that's been tapped by this electorate. The sense that the middle class is not sharing the prosperity that's being built by corporate America is real. And whoever the next president is, they'll have to address that angst and provide a plan for moving past it.
John, let me ask you basically the same question, but what happens once you throw Congress in the mix with a president who will have deep divisions behind him or her?
There will definitely be a lot of deep divisions. I think if we have a Republican House of Representatives, possibly a Republican Senate, and a Democrat in the White House, that we will just get a lot more sort of stalemate. I don't think you'll get very much accomplished policy-wise, which will not be good for the economy.
Well, explain that a little bit, because my next question was going to be, what do we need to get accomplished economy-wise?
I think that, one thing that would be good would be something like a sensible infrastructure expansion plan. And that's possible if you got if the Senate goes Democratic and you have a Democratic president, or if you get a Republican president and 2 Republican houses. But if we get divided government again, I think it will be very hard for them to work out any kind of deal, because none of them will think that it's in their interest, either in the Congress or the White House, to compromise with each other.
And we need a government that gets out of the way of private America. If they can't compromise, if they can't come to agreement, if we do have a divided government, we need a government that at least stays on the sideline and doesn't become a spectacle and a sideshow and things like raising the debt ceiling, for example, or creating a budget for the economy. We at least need the private sector to be able to work unimpeded by uncertainty. Sorry, Kai.
That's all right. You're going to throw debt limit on top of this election? That's Neela Richardson from Redfin and John Carney from the Wall Street Journal. Thanks, you two.
Thank you, Kai.
Have a good weekend.
You too. Wall Street, we talked about. As John said, it was not down a whole lot, but down it was. We will have the details when we do the numbers. All right, so a tad more about that jobs report now. Wages, as I was talking about with Neela, specifically, and this fact from the report this morning, they are growing at their fastest rate since the recovery started 7, what feels like really, really long years ago. That's a good thing. Well, it's an okay thing anyway. From Washington, Marketplace's Scott Tong explains what's going on there.
Wages grew 2.8% the past year. Really? When economists say real, they mean adjusted for inflation, which is ticking up. Lakshman Achuthan is co-founder of the Economic Cycle Research Institute.
Wage gain is great. We're not going to quibble with that, and it's the best we've seen since 2009 when the recession ended. Half of those increases you're not really going to feel because you're just paying it out in rent and health care.
The pay gains now are nothing like those pre-recession. Now, ordinarily, when the jobless rate is low, as it is now, bosses pay more to lure scarce workers. Not this time, says economist Brad Hirschbein at the Upjohn Institute for Employment Research. He says lots of people quit looking for jobs in the downturn, and they're just now coming back.
As long as they continue to do that and they flow back in, then employers can
hire people without raising wages that rapidly. And only when it gets really tight are you going to start to see much more rapid wage growth of the kind that we saw, say, in the late 90s.
Another thing workers are waiting for, productivity gains. Innovation and automation help workers make more, so they make more. But for now, productivity is tepid and kind of ignored, says Kathy Bosch-Chancik at Oxford Economics.
I guess the one thing I would say, because we are in the heat of the election season, none of the candidates have really adequately addressed pro-productivity, pro-growth measures. Most economists think that's the most critical issue right now.
Particularly when it comes to paychecks. Really. I'm Scott Tong for Marketplace.
The candidates and their surrogates have been making their stretch runs this week, and Florida has been getting a whole lot of love, each side trying to hit just the right mix of messages to galvanize their voters and get them to the polls. One thing that stirs those voters up pretty good is the minimum wage. 4 states, Washington, Colorado, Arizona, and Maine, should you be curious. 4 states have minimum wage increases on the ballot. In Florida, a wage hike proposal didn't quite make it to the ballot, but Marketplace's Mitchell Hartman reports it's still a potent issue for voters across party lines.
Hillary Clinton appeared at a city park in Tampa last week, and on a warm day in front of a very warm crowd, she gave her Seal the Deal stump speech, including this guaranteed applause line.
We need to raise the national minimum wage so that people who work full-time aren't left in poverty.
And afterward in the crowd, I met Bob Busing, a Tampa Democrat running for an open seat in the state Senate. He said the state's minimum wage currently stands at $8.05 an hour.
Well, let's do this in steps. Let's do 10, then go to 12, and then eventually 15.
And, Busing pointed out, even Donald Trump has called at some points in his campaign for a minimum wage hike. Here he was in Doral, Florida, back in July.
The minimum wage has to go up. People are at least $10, but it has to go up. But I think that states should really call the shot.
So what's come out of Florida's state legislature lately? A lot of silence. Democrats have tried and been repeatedly blocked from even getting a minimum wage hike considered. Randy Pestana is a policy analyst at Florida International University.
It's very difficult to move a $15 an hour minimum wage proposal in a state that the House is dominated by Republicans, the Senate is dominated by Republicans.
Although some cracks have emerged recently, 2 South Florida Republicans running in new districts with a lot of Black and Latino voters came out last month in favor of hiking the state minimum wage. Pestana says Republicans increasingly need those voters to win. A 60-car caravana weaves its way through a Puerto Rican neighborhood in Orlando. It's part of a big Get Out the Vote drive led by the group Que Vote Mi Gente. Residents come out on their lawns to wave and cheer, among them Elizabeth Bermudez.
Votar para la gente is we have to vote for our community, para la gente de nosotros.
Bermudez supports her disabled father and 18-year-old daughter working as a medical bill coder. Until recently, she made minimum wage. She's for Hillary Clinton, and what does she want?
Help the minimum wage. We all are surviving. We all are sacrificing. We take care of our children, our husband, our home, our job. Yes.
Still, a big hike in the minimum wage is a non-starter for fiscally conservative Republicans, like Anthony Liga, a financial planner in Sarasota.
I think you can have a certain amount of a level of a minimum wage. But like I tell people who fight for the $15 minimum wage, why do we stop at 15? Let's go 50. Let's go 100. And then they'll come back and they'll say, well, that will destroy business. Yes, and so will 15.
But this issue also cuts deeply across party lines. Steve Fixon is 59, a contractor and handyman in Sarasota. He's Republican, an absolute partisan for Donald Trump.
I believe the minimum wage needs to come up. The cost of living has done nothing but go up.
Does 15 sound too high to you?
No, I don't believe so. I'd like to see some of the American people go out there and try to make a living and put a roof over their head and raise a family at $15 an hour. It's literally impossible.
A recent University of South Florida Nielsen poll found 51% of residents think a minimum wage hike to $15 an hour would take Florida's economy in the right direction. I'm Mitchell Hartman for Marketplace.
Coming up.
It doesn't fit the metrics of what's a studio film or what's a commercial film.
Director Barry Jenkins about his new film, Moonlight. But first, let's do the numbers. Dow Industrial's off 42 points on this Friday, 0.2%, 17,888. The NASDAQ shed 12 points, 0.25%, 5,046. The S&P 500 extended its losing streak, as I mentioned, down 3 points, 0.1%, closed at 2,085. For the week gone by, the Dow off 1.5%, the NASDAQ down 2.7%, S&P 500 1.9% lower. Starbucks said the campaign is holding down U.S. sales. Nonetheless, coffee retailer beat expectations in both sales and profits last quarter. And yes, by the by, those red cups are going to be back for the holidays. Starbucks shares up 1.9%. It's the weekend, 4 days before this, oh my goodness, election, and maybe we could use something stronger than coffee. Anheuser-Busch shares rose 0.1% today. Brown-Forman, which makes Jack Daniels, up 0.1%. You're listening to Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Zip Schedule's online employee scheduling software. Employee shift scheduling can be time-consuming for any business manager. Put aside the spreadsheets and create your next schedule in minutes. With Zip Schedules, you can automatically communicate schedules to your employees. And Zip Schedule's cool mobile app lets your employees check and update their schedules from anywhere. Zip Schedules makes scheduling effortless. For a free trial and 20% off, visit zipschedules.com/marketplace.
And by Salesforce, helping marketers get smarter about their customers and plan better campaigns that blur the lines between marketing, sales, commerce, and service, all in the name of customer success. Salesforce powers marketing for the world's most innovative brands, from tailored emails to engaging mobile apps, social media, and targeted ads. Salesforce helps marketers blaze a trail for the brand journeys their customers want. That's great marketing, made by you with Salesforce. Connect to your customers in a whole new way. See a demo at salesforce.com/marketplace.
This is Marketplace. I'm Kai Risdall. I've got some good news, and I've got some bad news, y'all. Which one do you want first? All right, bad first. I'll decide. New Year's Eve has been sold. The good news is that it went for $1 billion. All right, I exaggerate, but only a little bit. The Chinese conglomerate Dalian Wanda has bought Dick Clark Productions, home of the heretofore referenced New Year's Rockin' Eve, and a whole mess of other high-profile productions, the Golden Globes and Miss America among them. Marketplace's Rima Crace has more on this latest Wanda purchase.
Wanda is having an awesome year, says Paul Durgarabedian, a media analyst with ComScore.
To seal their second billion-dollar deal in 2016, that's no small thing.
Earlier this year, it purchased Legendary Entertainment, producer of blockbuster movies like Jurassic World and Warcraft. And a few years ago, it bought the big theater chain AMC. Now, with its latest trophy, Dick Clark Productions, the Chinese entertainment group is delving into the TV world, says Durgarabedian.
They're buying these companies lock, stock, and barrel so that they can have access to that content and then change it over time. I mean, and by change, I mean they can add to it.
That sort of influence worries a group of lawmakers. They fear the company will push Chinese propaganda and are calling for more oversight of its purchases. But Wanda's leaders say, no, they're just after profit. Carl Girth is a professor of history at UC San Diego. He says the purchases allow Wanda to learn from Hollywood.
So that you can either do more of that abroad or you can apply what you've learned to the domestic market in China.
Over the last decade, China's invested more than $7 billion into U.S. entertainment, according to the research group Rhodium. Far more than the U.S. has sunk into China's entertainment business, says Yang Zhu, a professor at the City University of New York.
There are, I think there are certain regulations in China that it's very protective. It's the growth of its domestic sectors.
Meanwhile, Wanda has been eyeing a next purchase, one of Hollywood's big movie studios. I'm Rima Crace for Marketplace.
It's not a stretch to say that encryption and security are the hot things online right now, protecting yourself and your information. That's why starting just after New Year's, Google, maker of Chrome, the most popular web browser out there, is going to force you, or really try hard to make you, be safe. Gigi Duban reports.
Let's say you go to a news site and it's unencrypted. That means anyone looking in on what you're doing online can see all the information being passed back and forth, including your password.
It would be really, really easy for any attacker to grab that password, try it in a bank site, and get in.
Emily Schechter is product manager with the Google Chrome security team. She says now Chrome users visiting an unsecure site see an icon. It's the letter I in a circle. They can click on that for more info. But in January, if a site doesn't use HTTPS encryption,
They'll just say not secure in text in the address bar next to the icon.
Schechter says the January launch is to give sites time to switch over to secure encryption. Elad Uran, executive chairman of CoolSpan, which makes programs for people to communicate securely on cell phones, says he likes Google's tactic.
Using peer pressure, and shame to call out websites that are not taking the extra step.
That extra step of turning on HTTPS is easier and cheaper than it used to be. But Phil Libin of the tech venture capitalist firm General Catalyst says it could be a big deal for some companies, like media sites.
Just because most media sites have gotten so complicated with all of their third-party ad networks.
Because not only will those sites have to be secure, but so will all of their ads. So anything that makes the internet safer is good for Google. I'm Gigi Duban for Marketplace.
There's a movie opening today in what Hollywood likes to call wide release. Thousands of screens across the country. Quite a bump up from its debut in just 36 theaters a couple of weeks ago. But it already has that Oscar buzz going. It's called Moonlight. It's set in Miami. It's a quiet film made by a black filmmaker and an all-black cast. It's about drugs and race and sexuality and a whole bunch of other things. And it is pretty much the antithesis of the recent string of big-budget blockbusters. Barry Jenkins wrote and directed it. Barry, welcome to the program.
Hey, it's good to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
This is not a film that one would think studios would get behind, right? It's a complicated, difficult, emotional story. It's a black cast. It's a director who's not known. Tell me how this film got made.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, everything you say is true. It doesn't fit the metrics of what's a studio film or what's a commercial film or a bankable film. And yet, I made a film in 2008 called Medicine for Melancholy.
Yep. With Wyatt Cenac, right?
Wyatt Cenac, that we made for about a $15,000 production budget. Grossed like $120,000 at the box office.
Which is a plus, right? I mean, you're in the black.
We're on the marketplace, so I got to state my financials. And I'd met Plan B through that process.
Right, the production house.
Exactly, Brad Pitt's company. And it had been like 5 years since I'd done anything, and I'd written the script. And I was at the Telluride Film Festival in 2013, and I introduced the world premiere of 12 Years a Slave, which is also produced by Plan B. And so myself and my producer, Adela Romansky, who I went to film school with, we ran to Plan B there. And they were like, hey, what are you doing? I was like, well, I actually just adapted this play by Terrell McCraney.
Right.
And that was kind of how the process began.
You and Terrell McCraney, since you brought him up, you grew up. This film is set in Miami, in Liberty City, which is where you grew up, which is where Terrell McCraney grew up, although you didn't know each other together growing up.
Yeah, we lived blocks from one another, and both our moms went through this addiction to crack cocaine, so vividly depicted by Naomi Harris in the film. And yet we never knew one another, In 2003, he wrote the first draft of In Moonlight, Black Boys Look Blue, and I think it was very personal and semi-autobiographical. And it was beautiful because when it came to me, it had enough space that I could put my sort of biography, into this character of Chiron, the main character in the film. And once we decided to structure it in these 3 chapters, then I really found all these in-between places to sort of place what I call all these memories of what it was like to grow up in this place into the film.
This film says a lot of things about masculinity in this society and mass incarceration. It also talks a lot about demographics and economics and class and society and work.
See, this is why I'm on the
That's why you're on
Marketplace.
this program. But it does, right?
No, it does. And we don't talk about that a lot. I love that. Naomi Harris is the only actor who appears in all 3 stories.
Yep, she plays the mom.
She plays the mom. And I love that when you first meet her, she's this working single woman, She shows up in a nurse's uniform. She's got her badge and everything. And you see over the course of the film, to me, that character's a microcosm of the neighborhood I grew up in that went from this place where there was industry, there were these jobs, and crack cocaine hit, and then you just saw people who were these very almost pillars of the community just hit rock bottom, And with that, you have these kids who now they aren't provided for, they can't eat as much as they did, nobody's telling them to go to school. All these things ripple throughout. The movie's not about all those things, I must say, people in the marketplace.
As he speaks to the microphone.
All those things are tucked away. But if you look,
they're there.
But they're there, exactly. If you do an active read of the film, they're there. Yeah.
It's interesting to me that you can talk almost in the third person about this movie. You can talk about it being aggressive and visually this and visually. You've detached somehow. Is that what happened? You put it in the can and then you got to go on and...
No, it's not that. I think as a filmmaker, to do what I do, especially in this film, because some of this stuff was really personal. I mean, in the days that I worked with Naomi Harris, essentially playing this composite of my mom and Terrell's mom, was really intense. And the only way you get through that is to know I am a craftsperson. I am a filmmaker. I am creating this thing. The thing isn't me. I'm going to put a lot of myself into it, but it's a movie. And it's the only way I can get through it. The only way I can get through it. And I've been pretty consistent with that, Everything that's happened in the last 8 weeks has been amazing. And I remember thinking that this could happen. And so I took like a week to myself before anybody saw the film at Telluride, and I wrote down what I thought the film was, how good I thought it was, what I was proud of, what I wasn't so proud of. And I kind of stick to those things. And so it makes it a bit easier to talk about the film as the film.
There is a conversation that's going to be had when Oscar time rolls around. And you're going to be in that conversation. This film is going to be in that conversation. And juxtaposing there somewhere is going to be this idea that we've seen for a couple of years now of Oscars so white. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on that are twofold. One, it takes a long time to make a film. So this film began about 3.5 years ago. I'm sure some of these other films, Fences, Birth of a Nation, Queen of Katwe, 13th. I mean, there's just so many of these films this year that all probably began 4, 5, 6 years ago.
And all of which are themed along actors and characters of color.
Of color, exactly.
Right?
And take it a step further, predominantly filmmakers of color, like the directors, the writers, the producers. So I think the response has already begun, and you're seeing it in the work. And to frame these pieces, as a sort of reflection of the conversation that's been had for the last 18 months is a bit false, because I think it takes a bit of the will away from the creators and from the financiers and things like that who have begun to do the work to address this lack of diversity.
As you go into wide release, are you daunted at all? Or are you a little
not daunted. I mean, I think I'm trying to place myself into anyone's shoes and have a bit of distance from it. I'm very curious, man. I'm curious to see because I know what's in the film, and a buddy of mine. He went and saw the film in San Francisco, and somebody sat behind him. And this guy was making all these oh, man, no, not this, during some of the scenes in the film. Yeah. And he was like, but the guy stayed through the whole movie and was dead quiet when the film ended. And he was like, even if you didn't change that guy's mind, he saw something that he hadn't seen before, And again, that's a conversation that he's going to go and have with someone else. So I'm very curious to see what the people between the coast are going to think of the film.
It's a film called Moonlight. Literally cannot recommend it highly enough. Barry Jenkins, thanks.
Thank you, Brad. Marketplace for Kyrie's now.
We had a good chat, Barry and I did. I know I say this all the time, but this time I actually really do seriously mean it. The long version of this interview was good. You can find it at marketplace.org. Other projects Barry Jenkins has been working on and why he thinks movies ought to be more like books. Give it a listen. This final note on the way out today, in which Broadway basically gives up in the face of this election. I saw this in the New York Times today. About half of the theaters on Broadway are going dark Tuesday night because playing to empty houses is no fun. Kinky Boots, The Color Purple, and Wicked are taking the night off, a bunch of others as well. Hamilton, which is, of course, sold out, is going to go ahead. One does wonder, though, what the former Treasury Secretary would think of this year, huh? All right, Friday afternoon, we are out of here. The Dow off 42 points, 0.2%. The NASDAQ down 12 points, 0.25%. The S&P 500 extended its minor, as John Carney said, losing streak down 3 points, 0.1%. Our theme music was composed by B.J. Liederman. Marketplace is produced by Nancy Fargali. Saturn Nieves is the executive producer of this program. Deborah Clark is the vice president. I'm Kai Rizal. Have a good weekend, everybody. We'll see you Monday, all right? This is APM.
This Marketplace podcast is brought to you by Salesforce, helping marketers get smarter about their customers and plan better campaigns that blur the lines between marketing, sales, commerce, and service, all in the name of customer success. That's great marketing made by you with Salesforce. Connect to your customers in a whole new way. See a demo at salesforce.com/marketplace.
Well, I have the CBS weekend wrap-up coming up in just a moment. I'll look back at the stories making the headlines this week. And here's an interesting item that I found in my show prep feed. Women will finally get equal pay. But you're going to have to wait a little while, ladies. Well into the late 22nd century. Yeah, apparently the good news is the World Economic Forum says it will eventually happen. The bad news, though, is that it's based on their best guess using business and economic predicting algorithms, and it likely won't happen until 2186. Forward movement on this front has slowed down dramatically or even reversed in some countries around the world and could reverse even more if Donald Trump gets elected president here in the United States. But leading the gap back to where it was in 2008, per the Swiss organization's annual Global Gender Gap Report. When it comes to average annual earnings worldwide, women take home nearly $11,000 compared to men's nearly $20,000 paycheck, even though the report notes that women put in around 50 minutes more of work each day than men. Women are also less likely to achieve their senior positions in the workplace. Iceland and Finland are at the top of that 144-nation survey based on progress in economic opportunity, education, and other metrics, while Yemen and Pakistan bring up the rear. And the United States, good old USA, comes in at number 45.
The CBS News Weekend Roundup after this short break.
When your medical practice is growing fast and you have more patients than you have room for, you need to start, making some room. Which means all of a sudden, you're looking to buy new exam tables and stools, x-ray machines, and microscopes quickly. Business cards from American Express Open can give you buying power to help cover the big purchases you need to make when you need to make them. Find out how American Express cards and services can help prepare you for growth at open.com.
In business, risks and rewards come with every decision, like moving to the cloud with Office 365. While its benefits include anywhere access and lower costs, cyber threats and user errors can quickly wipe out data and the money you save. Barracuda Essentials for Office 365 provide an added layer of security and functionality for threat protection, email migration, data recovery, and quality of service. Move securely to Office 365. Visit barracuda.com/essentials to learn more.
This is the CBS News Weekend Roundup. All the political advertising will vanish after this coming Tuesday. One way of pointing out that November 8th is Election Day. Many Americans are casting their ballots early where states permit that. Perhaps that'll get to 40% of this year's votes. The latest CBS News New York Times poll found only 8% of registered voters haven't made up their minds for sure, so they may still be listening to the political commercials. Later on this broadcast, some Florida Republican activists who say they won't vote for Donald Trump.
I can't vote for Hillary Clinton either. This is one race I'm going to have to frighteningly sit out.
You'll hear our analysts who feel Clinton could win without Florida, but Trump needs that state, and others. Also ahead, some voters in Ohio who traditionally vote for Democrats plan to vote for Trump. And later, CBS's Lara Logan at the front line of the battle to recapture from ISIS Iraq's second-largest city, Mosul.
We saw a number of Iraqi soldiers, some of whom were badly wounded, taken a short distance from here to a field hospital set up by American troops.
And a lot more ahead on this Weekend Roundup. I'm Dan Raviv at CBS News in Washington. Let's begin with highlights of the last full week of campaigning by the major party candidates for president. Donald Trump, in the remaining days, had plans for rallies in 10 states, including Michigan and Pennsylvania, where polls indicate he's behind, but Trump's advisors say they can win there. CBS's Major Garrett is traveling with Trump.
In modern era, presidential campaigns tend to tighten down the home stretch, but there is kind of a new math aspect to the way Donald Trump and those around him look at this race. They believe there is a hidden Trump vote worth 4 to 5 percentage points. And so battleground states that appear tied in public polls to the Trump campaign, they believe they're well ahead. That's why Trump is looking for votes wherever he can find them, even those already in Hillary Clinton's column.
Who's from Minnesota?
Hundreds of voters traveled from Minnesota to northwest Wisconsin Tuesday to hear Donald Trump's closing argument.
This is a message for any Democratic voter who have already cast their ballots for Hillary Clinton and who are having a bad case of buyer's remorse.
For the first time, Trump delivered what he called a public service announcement for early voters in certain states.
You can change your vote to Donald Trump will make America great again, okay?
A major focus for Trump, evidence, as he puts it, from WikiLeaks, hacked emails showing what Clinton aides were apparently writing to each other, and the issue still of Clinton's use of a personal email server when she was Secretary of State. On Thursday,
will justice be done or not? Will justice be done, yes or no?
In Jacksonville, Florida, Donald Trump seized on a new report that the FBI has investigated criminal wrongdoing at the Clinton Foundation.
It was reported that an avalanche of information is coming in. The FBI agents say their investigation is likely to yield an indictment.
Not quite. CBS News has confirmed that the FBI has looked into the finances of the Clinton Foundation, but so far, no charges have been filed.
And Fox News on Friday said it was wrong to report that an indictment may be close in a Clinton Foundation case. Hillary Clinton's focus, how terrible Trump would be as president, as she sees it. In our report from CBS's Nancy Cordes.
I want all the girls in America to know you are valuable. Don't let somebody like this bully tell you otherwise.
At 3 Florida rallies, Clinton ticked through Trump's most notorious comments about the opposite sex.
He calls women ugly, disgusting, nasty all the time.
For proof, she turned to former Miss Universe Alicia Machado, who Trump publicly shamed in 1997 for gaining a little weight.
He said to me, Miss Piggy, Miss Housekeeping, Miss Eating Machine.
It's a closing argument aimed not just at female voters, but at the men who love them, too.
I wouldn't feel good as a father voting for somebody like that.
The Clinton camp released a series of ads Tuesday, all of them with the same message.
I can't vote for a man that says such horrific things about women.
Hello, Columbus! In Columbus, President Obama warned Trump is unlikely to change.
If you disrespected women before you were elected, you will disrespect women once you're president.
But in Fort Lauderdale, a protester interrupted Clinton with a sign that said her husband is a rapist, a common occurrence at Clinton rallies that set her off.
I am sick and tired of the negative, dark, divisive, dangerous vision and behavior of people who support Donald Trump.
Clinton aides insist the race is not as tight as new polls suggest. And yet they've begun airing ads in 4 states that supposedly tilt their way: Michigan, Virginia, Colorado, and New Mexico.
Looking for youth appeal and some say the African-American vote? Before an appearance on Friday with Jay-Z and Beyonce, Hillary Clinton was with Pharrell.
I'm not here to defend Hillary. She's a big girl. She can do that all by herself.
Clinton called on superstar Pharrell and Senator Bernie Sanders to help drum up support in student-rich Raleigh, North Carolina.
This campaign is not a personality contest. We're not voting for high school president.
Clinton argued she's got one presidential trait that is often underrated.
Listening to hear your stories, what you're worried about. Are we going to work together to build a stronger, fairer, better America? Or are we going to fear the future and fear each other and hunker down and be paralyzed by all of our prejudices?
On Thursday, the day after Game 7 of the World Series, Hillary Clinton, who was born in Chicago, said she was celebrating the victory of the Chicago Cubs. In simple terms, what a series, what a game. CBS News correspondent Steve Futterman was there in Cleveland, Ohio. Well, you'll hear it was Cubs fans, however, who were in ecstasy.
It was a celebration, a century in the making.
We won the World Series. Are you kidding me?
After decades and decades of frustration, the Chicago Cubs won baseball's top prize.
Just a great game. Epic series. We finally did it.
Game 7 was one for the ages. The Cubs were 4 outs away from winning the series in the 8th inning when the Indians staged a remarkable comeback.
Swung on, line to deep left field. It is gone!
Suddenly, it was 6-6. The game went into extra innings. In the 10th, the Cubs scored twice to win it. A century of despair comes to an end. Chicago's Ben Zobrist was named the series' most valuable player.
It's like a heavyweight fight, man.
108 years is a long time between championships, and there was time for some reflection by Chicago general manager Jed Hoyer.
I know there's so many people that are thinking of their grandfathers and fathers right now in Chicago, and that's really what it's all about.
Steve Futterman, CBS News, at the World Series in Cleveland.
In baseball, we know who won and who lost. As for the mystery of the presidential election this coming Tuesday, we'll have more coverage, including our analysts ahead, here on the CBS News Weekend Roundup. On the CBS News Weekend Roundup, I'm Dan Raviv. On Thursday night, federal law enforcement sources told CBS News that there was information that seemed credible, though not fully detailed, that al-Qaeda terrorists would try to carry out attacks in New York, Virginia, and or Texas. Local police were informed, of course. CBS News Homeland Security correspondent Jeff Pegues reported what counterterrorism agencies are doing.
They are following social media. They are looking in other forums for threat activity that sort of bubbles up to the top. What they're trying to do is separate what is fact from fiction, what threats are credible, and those that are just talk. Earlier this week, an alert to local police warned of polling places being seen as attractive targets for lone wolf-type attacks by individuals motivated by violent extremist or sovereign citizen activity. A senior FBI official says the Bureau is working closely with the Department of Homeland Security and other federal, state, and local agencies to disrupt and identify potential threats.
Again, putting out the word to police and the public that al-Qaeda, a group overshadowed by ISIS lately, might try to attack Americans maybe the day before the election. Let's turn back to what may happen on Tuesday night, election night, when the votes are being counted. There could be surprises or maybe not. We're joined by CBS News senior political editor Steve Chigaris. The indications are from the opinion polls that the race has been tightening. So as we begin to hear results on Tuesday, how can we find out if that's true or not?
Well, first we'll get some results from the exit polling that is done during the day. We'll get a sense of what the mood of the electorate is going into the evening. And then as the polls start to close, in the 7 o'clock hour, you have battleground states such as Virginia, North Carolina, Ohio. Each of those states could tell different stories depending on what Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump do in those states, and at least in terms of exit polling and early counts. I mean, in a state like Virginia, which is which is really sort of shaping up to be looking like what the changing look of America is, more minorities, more educated white voters. If Hillary Clinton isn't doing that well in Virginia, that could portend a rough night for her. Place like North Carolina, you have a larger African-American population. If Clinton is running in a tight race there, it could suggest that the African-American turnout is not as robust as she would like it to be. State like Ohio, we're expecting white working-class voters to come out for Donald Trump. If he is looking like he might be underperforming in Ohio, that could portend a tough night for him. So those are the kinds of things we'll be looking at in those early states.
The Trump forces have said they may be able to stage some surprises. Their internal polling is more optimistic, they say. Is there a state that maybe on most of our maps we're showing as blue or light blue, meaning leaning Democrat, that maybe Trump can win?
Well, I was just speaking with some Trump campaign folks who were touting two states, Michigan and New Mexico, and they feel that looking at their models, that those two states are more favorable to Trump than people are giving them credit for. Those are states that traditionally vote Democratic. They've been putting money and effort into those states in the recent weeks, and they've seen the Clinton people react almost immediately to them paying attention to those states, leading them to believe that the Clinton folks are seeing some of the same things that the Trump folks are seeing. So they are keeping an eye, or telling us to keep an eye on Michigan and New Mexico as potential spoilers for Trump versus Clinton.
That's what the Trump folks are saying. That's Steve Chigaris, senior political editor here at CBS News. Thanks and best of luck Tuesday.
Thanks, Dan.
Let's turn to CBS News correspondent Stephen Portnoy. You've been covering the campaign just about every day, hearing what I might call rival claims by the Trump team and the Clinton team. In recent days especially, both have said, they have paths to victory. Well, describe them, and which is more convincing?
Both campaigns, Dan, I think at this point have acknowledged how tight
the race has become. The Clinton camp says they always anticipated that in the last days, but increasingly they're acknowledging the fact that they do need to spend some time shoring up some states like Pennsylvania and New Hampshire. Hillary Clinton is spending a lot of time in Pennsylvania through these last days. Ohio as well, Florida. Additionally, sending President Obama to Florida and New Hampshire. But the Clinton campaign has also suggested that it might try to play in states that the Democrats haven't won in 20 years. Arizona, for example, where Michelle Obama, Hillary Clinton have made appearances in these last weeks. Donald Trump, on the other hand, says he has a path to 270 votes through Florida, North Carolina, and Ohio. They say they feel very comfortable in the red states like Arizona and Georgia, even though news organization polling suggests that the races there are very tight. They say they're doing particularly well in Ohio, and if they can win Ohio, they think they might have a good shot in Pennsylvania. And Donald Trump is making repeated stops there in these last days.
And the people who work for Trump, months ago we said he doesn't have a normal campaign staff. He doesn't have a ground game. I'm getting the impression in recent weeks that when it comes to reading polls, when it comes to deciding where he should go and encouraging him to stay on message, he does have professionals behind him.
They are looking at data. They are comparing the RNC's voter data file to their own commercial information that they've purchased. They are targeting people on social media. They are placing ads on television in a number of the key states. In these last weeks, it has become clear how professional this organization is. What they lack, however, is the structure, the ground game that the Democrats have perfected and utilized in this race. And what will be so interesting to watch by Tuesday night, Dan, is the extent to which the Trump campaign has been able to activate its voters. The one thing that they say that the polls don't show is the extent to which people who have not participated in this process to this point have become engaged by Donald Trump and are ready to vote for him if they haven't already. And they say what the Democrats are taking for granted is the notion that the Obama coalition that built in 2008 and 2012 will be there for Hillary Clinton. They are seeing, as both campaigns are, a drop-off in the African-American vote. And they say that Democrats are foolish to think that the numbers who came out for Obama in 2008 and 2012 will be there for Hillary Clinton.
That's what many Republicans are saying. What about the day after? You cover Congress. We both live here in the United States of America. There's a lot of fear, and some of it expressed even in the latest CBS News New York Times poll, that neither candidate as president, Trump or Clinton, can unite the nation. Do you think in some way the tone, let's say, of a concession speech by one or the other might make a difference late Tuesday night or early Wednesday? Who knows?
I think it'll be incredibly important. 82% of the American people are disgusted by this process of choosing our next president. Only 13% say they're excited about this quadrennial civic responsibility that we have of choosing our commander-in-chief. So I think it's fair to say it's incumbent upon whoever wins and loses to send a signal that it's time to move forward together as a country.
4 out of 5 disgusted. That's CBS News correspondent Stephen Portnoy. See you on the radio Tuesday. Thanks, Stephen.
You bet.
We'll have more politics coming up, but stay with us. You'll hear CBS's Lara Logan on the battlefront against ISIS in Mosul, Iraq. That's next on the CBS News Weekend Roundup.
The CBS News Weekend Roundup after this short break.
It's finally fall. The weather is cooling off, and there's no better time to upgrade your cookouts than right now. Let me tell you about Omaha Steaks. They have a huge menu of steaks and more. The process is convenient and quick. Shopping delivered straight to your door. Every purchase is backed by Omaha Steaks' 100% unconditional guarantee. And right now, you can get the limited-time family grill pack for just $49.99. You get all of this: 2 5-ounce filet mignons, 2 5-ounce top sirloins, 4 4-ounce boneless pork chops, 4 3.5-ounce chicken fried steaks, 12-ounce package of all-beef meatballs, 4 4-ounce Omaha steak burgers, 4 4-ounce gourmet jumbo franks, a 16-ounce package of Omaha Steakhouse fries, 4 caramel apple tartlets, OS seasoning packet, plus 4 additional Omaha Steaks burgers. Just for listening, Omaha Steaks is offering all of this for only $49.99. This is a huge savings. Go to omahasteaks.com, enter code FTN in the search bar, and add the family grill pack to your cart. Don't miss this deal. Visit omahasteaks.com and enter code FTN in the search bar to get over 30 gourmet items for just $49.99.
On the CBS News Weekend Roundup, I'm Dan Raviv. We'll have more U.S. politics in a few moments, but first the battle for Iraq's second-largest city, Mosul. Held by ISIS, the terrorist so-called Islamic State, for over 2 years, Iraq's army is going in to liberate the city, with Iraqi Kurdish fighters helping on the outskirts, and U.S. and other NATO forces providing intelligence, ammunition, and, as you'll hear, medical assistance. We have a report from CBS News 60 Minutes correspondent Lara Logan in a heavily damaged neighborhood on the eastern side of Mosul. You'll hear Lara mention IEDs, improvised explosive devices. It's obvious even if many ISIS fighters fled, many remained with a lot of firepower.
The fighting was intense. There were IEDs on the battlefield. U.S. warplanes had been pounding targets from the skies for hours through the night. The air was filled with the hiss and whine of light and heavy machine guns. There was heavy artillery, light artillery mortars coming in, anti-tank missiles. We saw a number of Iraqi soldiers, some of whom were badly wounded, being treated here as a kind of emergency stop, and then taken a short distance from here to a field hospital set up by American troops.
CBS's Lara Logan. Sunday evening, she'll have a report from the battle lines in Iraq on CBS's 60 Minutes. Back to the political battle in this country, let's hear Anthony Salvanto, CBS News Director of Elections, naming the states that Donald Trump would have to win to capture 270 electoral votes. That's the number needed to win the presidency.
You look at states he has to win, like Florida. If he gets that, you look at the map and you say he gets a little closer to 270, but not close enough. If he gets Ohio, he gets closer. If he were to get North Carolina, he gets closer still, but it's still not putting him over that 270 that he needs. So he still needs to add another state or two to his column. He could go try to get, let's say, Nevada and something else, maybe even a Colorado, or try to flip a blue state like a Wisconsin. It's only then that he goes over 270, and that just kind of emphasizes the tough road, though it's doable, that he's got in the next few days.
That was on CBS This Morning on Friday. On the same broadcast, John Dickerson, who's host of Face the Nation, was thinking of North Carolina, which Barack Obama barely won in 2008. But in 2012, Obama lost to Mitt Romney in that state. For Hillary Clinton, motivating black voters is the key?
Right. Well, African-American voters and those college-educated voters in the Research Triangle in the middle of the state. She needs to jack up turnout with African-Americans and then depress turnout for Donald Trump or win herself among those white college-educated voters that have been a part of the Republican coalition, but that Donald Trump has been having trouble with. So she wants to run up her vote and depress his vote.
Her final pitch here has been very anti-Trump, very negative, despite the fact that as we saw in the numbers, there's great disaffection with this campaign. Is that a wise strategy?
There's disaffection with the campaign, disaffection with both candidates. Yeah. But for her, what she needs to do is remind those voters of all the bad things about Donald Trump. Yeah. And what they've seen in the polls, and we've seen consistently, is when Donald Trump is using the teleprompter and is not getting involved in a fight with a Gold Star family or a former Miss Universe, that Republicans start to come home. They start to come back into his column, Republicans who found him and think he's too risky to be president. So what the Clinton team is trying to do is keep the most risky image of Donald Trump in front of voters as long as they possibly can to keep those Republicans feeling nervous about it.
John Dickerson, host of Face the Nation on CBS every Sunday. He was questioned by Anthony Mason on CBS This Morning. What about Florida, where Barack Obama was the winner in 2008 and then just barely in 2012? Some encouraging indicators for Hillary Clinton, perhaps, Republicans who shun Trump.
I'm Peter King, CBS News, along the I-4 corridor in Central Florida. Political consultant and lifelong Republican Mike Scudero says he's not voting for Donald Trump because of
his big mouth and his inconsistencies on the issues. I mean, just about everything he stood for 4 years ago, 8 years ago, he's gone the opposite way this time.
Scudero says Trump appeals to the party's lowest common denominator by insulting rather than building.
That's where I have a hard time looking at my children, explaining to them why I could vote for him.
Republican and former Florida State Senator Paula Dockery knows what she wants in a president.
It needs to be somebody who has the intellect, the experience, the temperament, who's respected throughout the world.
Dockery, now a newspaper columnist, says Donald Trump is none of those things. Dockery calls him dangerous, divisive.
You want a role model who shows you how to stand up to bullies, not how to be a bully.
And she says she gets hate mail about it, and thank yous from other Republicans who agree, quietly.
They're, I guess, fearful to say out loud that they're supporting Hillary Clinton.
Who Dockery supports out loud. Both Dockery and Scudero say they've repeatedly been called rhinos, Republicans in name only, because they don't support Donald Trump.
And I look at them and go, you know, I don't have to prove my credentials to anyone. I've had a Republican voter card since I was 18. I've voted more for Republicans than Democrats, certainly, and never voted for a Democrat for president, including this year. I can't vote for Hillary Clinton either. This is one race I'm going to have to frighteningly sit out.
If being conservative means saying the hateful rhetoric that I hear the people who say they are conservative, I don't want to be that.
None of this sits well with hardcore Trump supporters. Tony Latimer heads the Volusia County Republican Party in Daytona Beach. He also works for the Trump campaign. Latimer is particularly angry at former President George W. Bush.
When Bush won that election, I spent 3 days in Tallahassee, with my sign saying certify the vote. And I'm extremely angry and disappointed in George W. for him to do what he's doing. For them to come out and support somebody like Hillary just because they don't like Trump?
Latimer says not if, but when Donald Trump is elected president, it will be anything but business as usual for the GOP.
There will be I would say a rearranging of the structure of the Republican Party. And as far as I'm concerned, that's a good thing.
Political consultant Mike Scudero isn't so much afraid of that. What he's worried about is what's going to happen Tuesday.
You're going to have diehard Trump supporters who are now fed up with the party mechanisms and go in, vote for president, drop the mic, and walk out, and don't bother to vote for the rest of the ballot.
Paula Dockery, the former senator from Lakeland, says Republicans not supporting Donald Trump, though, is more common than you may think.
I'm being told by people who have been canvassing neighborhoods, walking door to door, that there'll be a Trump sign in someone's yard, and they'll knock on the door, and the woman will come to the door and say, "That's my husband, I'm voting for Hillary." Or the person canvassing will try and talk to the woman at the house. The man of the house will say, "No, she's not available," and then she'll go chase them down the street and says, "He doesn't want me to talk to anybody."
Reporting from Lakeland and Daytona Beach, I'm Peter King, CBS News.
With the election this coming Tuesday, it could be a good time to download our app for your smartphone. News and features always available. The free app is CBS Radio News. And please follow us on Twitter for headlines at CBS Radio News. And I'm at Dan Raviv on the CBS News Weekend Roundup. On the CBS News Weekend Roundup, I'm Dan Raviv. It's been revealed that Democrats, including candidate Hillary Clinton and many candidates for Senate seats, got campaign contributions from people at a small law firm in Boston acting improperly, some say illegally, as straw donors. Employees of the law firm were encouraged to donate, and the heads of the firm reimbursed them, thus trying to get around restrictions on how much money an individual can give. This was exposed by the Center for Responsive Politics and the Boston Globe investigators on the Spotlight team. You remember the movie Spotlight about their investigation of sexual abuse by priests. On Wednesdays, CBS News correspondent Tony DeCopel reported after speaking, as you'll hear, with Spotlight editor Scott Allen.
The Thornton Law Firm has just 10 partners, but dollar for dollar, it's one of the nation's biggest political donors. According to the firm's own documents, leaked by a whistleblower, days or even hours after making these donations, partners received money matching the amount they gave.
Once the law firm knew that we had these records, they didn't deny that this was the case.
Scott Allen is the Globe Spotlight editor.
So hundreds and hundreds of times, a lawyer would donate money to a candidate or a political party and then almost immediately be given back that very same sum.
That is correct. If you give a donation and then somebody else reimburses you for the donation, that is a clear violation of the spirit and the letter of the law at the federal and state levels.
Federal law limits partnerships like the Thornton Law Firm to a maximum donation of $2,700 per candidate. But campaign finance watchdogs say the firm used its individual partners as straw donors, allowing it to funnel money to campaigns well above that legal limit. The Spotlight team and the Center for Responsive Politics looked at donations from 3 of the firm's partners from 2010 to 2014. The trio and one of their wives gave $1.6 million, mostly to Democrats. Over the same period, they received $1.4 million back in bonuses.
A Thornton spokesperson said the donations are legal because they came out of each partner's ownership stake in the firm. In other words, they paid with their own money. It was a voluntary program which only involved equity partners and their own personal after-tax money to make donations, the firm said in a statement. Through its employees, the firm gave to Democrats running in some of this year's most hotly contested races. How confident are you that this is an isolated program, that only Thornton does it?
I am not confident at all. We've had a number of parties coming forward to us saying, hey, they do this at our place too. The issue is always, can you prove it?
Scott Allen, head of the Boston Globe Spotlight team, some Democratic senators and candidates say they're returning donations to the Thornton law firm. The Clinton campaign says it will give the money to the U.S. Treasury, believed to be around $20,000. At the White House, the Obama administration has been thinking about the peaceful transition of power. That takes place on January 20th, when the newly elected leader of this country will be sworn in as 45th President of the United States. And with that comes a Twitter handle and more. Here's CBS News White House correspondent Pam Coulter.
President Obama's been a social media powerhouse using Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook to connect with Americans and address issues like income inequality.
Too much of our wealth is still taken by the top.
Fight for a Supreme Court nominee.
Those favoring a confirmation hearing outnumber those who oppose it by more than 2 to 1.
And encourage people to get covered.
Just go to healthcare.gov.
He's preparing to pass the social media torch to his successor, including his 11 million Twitter followers. The new president will inherit the POTUS account. Mr. Obama's tweets will move to POTUS 44. Pam Coulter, CBS News, the White House.
AT&T's bid to buy Time Warner, the entertainment company that owns HBO, other TV channels, and a lot more, is not a sure thing. Obviously, the $85 billion being offered is impressive, but a Democrat in the Senate, Al Franken of Minnesota, is hoping to persuade federal regulators to block the merger. On CBS This Morning, Senator Franken explained to Charlie Rose, Gayle King, and Norah O'Donnell.
AT&T has the pipes, so to speak. So it delivers content. It has DirecTV. It has the second largest mobile broadband. Increasingly, people getting their TV through that. Buying for $85 billion Time Warner, which has some of the most desirable content.
Well, why is it bad for the consumer?
Why is that bad? Because it's vertical integration. And it also has HBO and CNN and TBS.
But has the NBC-Comcast merger, which you led a fight against, has that hurt consumers?
I think it did. Yeah, it did. And in fact, the Department of Justice and the FCC put conditions on that, and this is what AT&T is saying, well, put conditions on us. The reason that Comcast and Time Warner Cable, which is a separate company, didn't get approved was that Comcast did not go through with some of those conditions. And this raises prices for consumers. It always does. This concentration, this consolidation of media is not good for consumers.
So you're saying it raises prices and decreases choices?
Exactly. And usually leads to worse service, even worse service.
Senator Al Franken and some Republicans, including Donald Trump, condemned the planned merger as bad for consumers. But the chief executive of Time Warner, who wants to be taken over, Jeff Bukes, says the combined company will always want to offer the most channels at a good price and will want its own channels, such as HBO, to be as widely distributed as possible, not only on AT&T and the system that it owns, DirecTV. That's big business. Now our Weekend Roundup commentator, Charles Grodin.
I went to the dentist recently. I was very grateful he had the radio on a music station. Listen to the news while you're at the dentist? With all due respect to the dentist and the news, count me out. I'm Charles Grodin for the CBS News Weekend Roundup.
Friday was the birth centenary of Walter Cronkite, the most trusted man in America when he was anchoring the news on CBS for decades, would have been 100 years old on November 4th. Sorry to remind you that he died 7 years ago. But CBS News correspondent Barry Bagnotto joins us in not forgetting our gold standard role model.
Good evening from the CBS News Control Center in New York.
Trust takes years to build. It can disappear in a second. The nation's trust in Walter Cronkite never wavered. Maybe it was the humility he learned in the Depression Dust Bowl.
While my mother denied it to her dying day, I know darn good and well she made hamburgers out of dog food.
Definitely, it was his determination to get the story right and tell it straight.
Never took any elocution lessons, no diction lessons. But what you see, I'm afraid, is what you get.
From the tragic low of JFK's death,
President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time,
to the thrilling heights of reaching the moon.
The Eagle has landed.
Oh, boy. Boy. When that vehicle landed on the moon, I was speechless.
That was the rare occasion. Walter Cronkite spoke to America and occasionally for it. And in these times of information saturation where fiction too often is presented as fact, his sure voice and guiding presence are missed.
That's the way it is.
That's the way it is.
Barry Bagnetto, CBS News, Washington.
Up next from today's CBS News, a mystery illness hurts children, but there's hope perhaps for fighting Alzheimer's when the CBS News Weekend Roundup continues.
The CBS News Weekend Roundup after this short break.
Need a website? Why not do it yourself with Wix.com? No matter what business you're in, Wix.com has something for you. Used by more than 84 million people worldwide, Wix.com makes it easy to get your website live today. You need to get the word out about your business? It all starts with a stunning website. With hundreds of designer-made, customizable templates to choose from, and the drag-and-drop editor, there is no coding needed. You don't need to be a programmer or designer to create something beautiful. You can do it yourself with Wix.com. Wix.com empowers business owners to create their own professional websites every day. When you're running your own business, you're bound to be busy. Too busy. Too busy worrying about your budget. Too busy scheduling appointments. Too busy to build a website for your business. And because you're too busy, it has to be easy. And that's where Wix.com comes in. With Wix.com, it's easy and free. Go to Wix.com to create your own website today. The result is stunning.
On the CBS News Weekend Roundup, I'm Dan Raviv. In the state of Washington, a cluster of polio-like illness in children is under investigation by health authorities. 2 cases have been confirmed as a rare condition known as AFM. 1 child has died. CBS News correspondent Mireya Villarreal reported from Seattle Children's Hospital, where 3 patients are being treated.
The affected children range in ages from 3 to 14 years old. All of them, all of a sudden, had a disabling pain in their arms and in their legs. And while AFM is not contagious, the CDC says there is no cause or cure. The mother of the 1 boy who died tells me it all came without warning.
I was really scared. I was like, what's going on?
Mary Jo de Guzman says her 6-year-old son Daniel was always happy and healthy.
Say hi.
Hi. Daniel died over the weekend, one of 9 children in Washington state recently exhibiting symptoms consistent with acute flaccid myelitis. At this point, he is not one of the 2 confirmed AFM cases, a condition that affects the nervous system. It's characterized by a sudden weakness in 1 or more arms or legs and sometimes causes facial weakness and difficulty swallowing.
He woke up and looked at me, and he started crying. But his tear ducts, he couldn't cry because of his tear ducts. His brain wasn't letting him cry.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says as of September, 89 people in 33 states were confirmed to have AFM this year. That's up from 21 cases last year, and the exact cause is unclear. Gracie Fisher, now paralyzed from the neck down, was diagnosed with AFM in 2014 when cases spiked even higher than this year.
I began to feel tingling in my hands and pain in my neck. And within 5 minutes, I couldn't walk.
Daniel's mother still doesn't know why her son died.
Why share a moment that was so raw for you and your family?
We thought, if we shared this with people, that somebody that can give us an answer.
That from CBS's Mireya Villarreal in Seattle. Now Barry Bagnetto reports on a source of hope for the many who'd like a cure or some treatment that works against the memory-robbing disease known as Alzheimer's.
A very promising Alzheimer's drug called verobesistat helps clear the brain of amyloid plaque buildups with no major side effects, according to a study in the journal Science Translational Medicine.
We've been doing Alzheimer's research for more than 20 years. We have not had a successful trial in this field.
Dr. Scott Turner at Georgetown's Memory Disorders Program, which is participating in critical phase 3 trials, one key question: how much amyloid must be removed to improve cognition in Alzheimer's patients? Barry Bagnetto, CBS News, Washington.
Let's hear from a politician who's excited about the notion that this country may elect a woman as president. I spoke with Yvette Clarke, a Democrat, expected to be reelected to the House of Representatives for a 6th two-year term this coming Tuesday, representing parts of Brooklyn and Queens in New York. I asked Yvette Clarke if we wake up Wednesday to the news that the next chief executive of our nation is a female, what difference does that make?
Wow, it makes a big difference. From the struggle for women's suffrage in the United States of America to, in our lifetime, having the first woman elected president, I think that we can say that we've matured as a nation.
Matured. Okay, got to the point that the United States can have a woman. And by the way, you're an African-American politician in the Democratic Party. Does it feel like a nice 1-2 punch? Barack Obama for 8 years and now Hillary Clinton?
Well, for someone who was born in the 60s, it's amazing to see it happen in my lifetime. There were folks before me who would never have thought they'd live to see the day.
Do you expect that her policies will be different because she's a woman or because she's Hillary Clinton, leader of the Democratic Party?
You can't separate Hillary Rodham Clinton, the woman, from being president of the United States and being the head of the Democratic Party. That's just her DNA. That's just, who she is. She's going to come with her own experiences of being a mother, of being a grandmother, of fighting for the rights of families, from the very beginning of her public service career to, just having a passionate concern for the well-being of people. I think that it's going to be great for our country.
Yvette Clarke, member of Congress from New York, of course, a Democrat. Now, don't assume that all women or even young women want Hillary Clinton to win. CBS News correspondent Elaine Quijano heard a range of opinions when she got about 36 20-somethings to sit down in New York and talk about politics. By the way, these millennials come from 12 different states.
I'm a very proud conservative, but I don't think that Donald Trump represents the Republican Party.
I'm 20 years old, unapologetic American, and full-blown deplorable Trump supporter.
I'm 19 years old, and I'll be voting for Gary Johnson this year.
I'm 27, and I'm with her.
Honestly, all I really know is I'm not with her, and I don't support Hillary Clinton. I say I'm a Trump supporter, and they immediately think I'm racist, I'm Islamophobic. That's a problem in this election. We automatically jump to conclusions that a Trump supporter is this bad, uneducated person.
He is bombastic, and he says a lot of stuff that I absolutely 100% do not agree with, but at the same time, I don't want to support a liar.
All right, I want to turn to another topic here, and that is the issue of civil rights. But a recent poll found that 85% of young African Americans and 72% of Hispanics believe their race is under attack in the U.S. I wonder, why do you think that is?
This particular topic is something that's really dear to my heart because I was robbed and shot in my head. And if that wasn't enough, I look up and I was staring down the barrel of another gun. And this time it wasn't the barrel of a gun from someone else trying to rob me. This time I was looking down the barrel of the police.
Ryan Quattromani, let me ask you, you're the son of a former police officer, is that right?
He actually recently retired. I think there are bad police officers. I think, there's plenty of corrupt police officers. But I think Obama hasn't done a decent job at helping the African-American communities, and I think Hillary Clinton is part of that. But I do support our police.
Earlier comment about police officers, versus the Black Lives Matter, the African-American community. One is a choice. You have a choice to be a cop. You sign that. You go through training for that. Ain't no choice being black. And Trump has normalized his talk and has put a lot of lives in danger.
Here's the thing. Trump hasn't been in the White House, so to say that Trump tore our country apart at the seams and created this racial division No way. President Obama was the one who was in the White House for 8 years, and race relations have been worse than ever in this country. Let's look at who is in office, an African-American man who has torn apart this country. We need to look at that.
That from CBS's Elaine Quijano, part of our election night coverage this coming Tuesday. From CBS News on TV and here on the radio, we'll be anchoring coverage starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll have the results state by state. We'll talk about Congress and issues. You don't have to stare at a TV. The Weekend Roundup is produced at CBS News in Washington by Howard Aronstein. I'm Dan Raviv, CBS News.
November 5th, 1940.
My conscience will not let me turn my back upon a call to service.
Franklin D. Roosevelt becomes the only American president to win an unprecedented third term in office. Roosevelt serves as president for a total of more than 12 years, longer than any other, when he dies months into his fourth term. 1968. Richard Nixon narrowly wins the White House 8 years after his close loss to John F. Kennedy. With the nation divided over the Vietnam War, President-elect Nixon promises Americans,
"This will be an open administration, open to new ideas, open to men and women of both parties, open to the critics as well as those who support us. We want to bridge the generation gap. We want to bridge the gap between the races. We want to bring America together."
1994. Former President Ronald Reagan reveals that he has Alzheimer's disease. He dies nearly 10 years later. Also in 1994, George Foreman becomes boxing's oldest heavyweight champion at age 45.
I just want to go out there, show the world that 45 and 55 is not a death sentence. We can do anything we want to do.
Foreman knocks out Michael Moorer in the 10th round of their fight in Las Vegas. And 1989. Pianist Vladimir Horowitz dies in New York. He was 86 years old. Today in history, November 5th, Sandy Kozel, The Associated Press.
This is the Composer's Datebook for November 5th. I'm John Zeck. On today's date in 1938, two orchestral works by the American composer Samuel Barber received their very high-profile premiere performances on a live coast-to-coast broadcast by the NBC Symphony, conducted by Arturo Toscanini. Toscanini had met Barber in Austria the previous year when Barber's Symphony No. 1 was performed at the Salzburg Music Festival. The symphony impressed Toscanini so much that he asked Barber for a short orchestral piece he might perform with the NBC Symphony. Barber offered Toscanini his pick of two short pieces, and he must have been surprised when Toscanini agreed to perform both of them, a newly composed essay for orchestra, and Barber's arrangement for full-string orchestra of a movement from a string quartet that he had written in 1936. As the Adagio for strings, it was destined to become Barber's single best-known work. Elegiac and frankly emotional in tone, Barber's Adagio acquired a special resonance during World War II as a threnody for America's war dead. It was also performed at the funeral of the wartime president, Franklin D. Roosevelt. More recently, Barber's Adagio has been used to great effect in several successful films, including The Elephant Man and Platoon. In a memorial tribute to Barber, American composer Ned Rorem wrote, "If Barber, 25 years old when the Adagio was completed, later aimed higher, he never reached deeper into the heart." You'll find more on composers and their music at our website, composersdatebook.org. Composer's Datebook is a production of APM, American Public Media, and the American Composers Forum, reminding you that all music was once new. The Writer's Almanac is supported by the Poetry Foundation, publisher of Poetry Magazine, a monthly devoted to discovering and publishing new voices in poetry. More at poetryfoundation.org.
And here is the Writer's Almanac for Saturday. It's the 5th of November, 2016. It's the British holiday Guy Fawkes Day. Guy Fawkes, one of the Catholic conspirators who meant to blow up Parliament in 1605. And it was on this day, November 5th, 1605, he was attending to the 36 barrels of gunpowder in the cellar under the House of Lords. When the authorities came in and arrested him, he was sentenced to death for treason. On the day of his execution, he jumped from the gallows, breaking his neck and dying instantly and avoiding the more painful execution of being hanged, drawn, and quartered. It's on this day they shoot off fireworks in Britain, and they burn Guy Fawkes in effigy. It's the birthday of the playwright Sam Shepard, Fort Sheridan, Illinois, 1943, author of 40 plays, including Curse of the Starving Class, Buried Child, True West, and others. It's the birthday of the novelist Diana Abu Jaber, born 1960 in Syracuse, New York, American mother, Jordanian father. When she was 7, family moved to Jordan, spent 2 years there, which affected her profoundly. Her father was a professional cook, and he was especially known for his lamb shanks in buttermilk and okra braised in garlic. And so she took up cooking in a variety of restaurants after college, then fell into food writing, and then wrote novels, Arabian Jazz and Birds of Paradise, The Language of Baklava, a food memoir, and another one, Life Without a Recipe. Arabian Jazz, considered the first novel to bring the Arab-American experience to a wide reading audience. And it's the birthday of Thomas Flanagan, Greenwich, Connecticut, 1923, author of historical novels set in Ireland, The Year of the French, the best known, which won the National Book Critics Circle Award in 1979. Here's a poem for today by Jim Harrison, Carpe Diem. Night and day, seize the day, also the night, a handful of water to grasp. The moon shines off the mountain snow where grizzlies look for a place for the winter's sleep and birth. I just ate the year's last tomato in the year's fatal whirl. This is mid-October, apple time. I picked them for years. One Macintosh yielded 60 bushels. It was the birth of love that year. Sometimes we live without noticing it. Over-trying makes it harder. I fell down through the tree, grabbing branches to slow the fall, got the afternoon off. We drove her aqua Ford convertible into the country with a sack of red apples. It was a perfect day with her sun-brown legs, and we threw ourselves into the future together, seizing the day. 50 years later, we hold each other, looking out the windows at birds, making dinner, a life to live day after day, a life of dogs and children and the far wide country out by rivers, rumpled by mountains. So far, the days keep coming. Seize the day gently as if you loved her. A poem by Jim Harrison, Carpe Diem, from Dead Man's Float, published by Copper Canyon Press and used by permission here on the Writer's Almanac. Supported by the Poetry Foundation, publisher of Poetry Magazine, committed to discovering great poets and printing their verse. Back issues and subscriptions available at poetrymagazine.org. Be well, do good work, and keep in touch.
Well, friends, I believe that's going to wrap it up for today's edition of Haff in the Morning. Let's see. How about one more story before we go? I just don't want to just say goodbye and see you tomorrow. So what do you say we run another story? How about this one for size? Society is certainly a lot more accepting of tattoos these days, letting people express themselves about how they want to, rather what they want to do with their own bodies. But that doesn't mean people still don't do stupid and potentially regrettable things with ink. For example, over in England, 20-year-old Courtney Lay may be a good example, as she just let her boyfriend talk her into getting his name tattooed on her face. Or as her possessive partner puts it, she's been branded like Heinz beans. I love that expression. Well, the word Ryan now sits above her left eyebrow, while Wibbo is on the other side. Wibbo? W-I-B-B-O? I don't get that one. Well, it's on the other side, so nobody else will ever be able to look at her without seeing Ryan's handiwork. Oh, Ryan Wibberley, who goes by the name Wibbo, is a 23-year-old tattoo artist who claims he has persuaded 39 ex-girlfriends to get his name tattooed on them. 39 ex-girlfriends. Wow, what a track record. Most didn't go for the face, but apparently legs, arms, fingers, and backsides instead. He also said, I've got Courtney's name on my hand, but she says the only ex whose name I've got done, of course, we're sure calling her his ex, was simply a slip of the tongue, and there's no way indicative of things to come. Explain why she got the tattoo, Courtney said, I do it because he's paranoid and wants to have me branded. He thinks it'll put other men off. Yeah, it'll put other men off, all right. Man, 39 ex-girlfriends. I think that should be a red flag to you there, dear, that maybe this was a really stupid idea. But it's your body. It's your choice. Well, friends, feel free to drop me an email about anything you'd like to talk about, including tattoo ideas. Doesn't mean I'm going to follow through with them on, though. At haffinthemorning@gmail.com. That's HAFF in the morning @gmail.com. Or, and also be sure to check out my website, tinyurl.com/HafterMedia. tinyurl.com/HafterMedia. And with that being said, my time is up. Thank you for yours.
God bless America.
America's come so far. We're less racist, sexist, homophobic, and anti-religious, specific religions than we used to be. We have one remaining bigotry. We don't want to be around anybody who disagrees with us. And, you know, the crowd's laughing, but they didn't laugh loud because they know I'm telling the truth.
Oh, good God.